Chapter 56. Near the gate of Xingxing No. 1 High School, Han Qingwu angrily dialed a number on her cell phone. However, a prompt came out: the subscriber you dialed is powered off. She couldn't wait to catch Tan Xiao and ruthlessly beat him up. Han Qingwu didn't expect that Tan Xiao would actually lie to her. He obviously said that he would wait for her in the car, but he took advantage of her going to buy water and slipped away. She was a smart girl. She easily figured out that Tan Xiao said that he wasn't feeling well and wanted her to accompany him to the hospital. All of these were lies. Tan Xiao is too hateful. Skipping classes is fine, but he even made this great aunt escort him out of the school. This is intolerable. Wait until I find you. I'll definitely teach you a lesson. Nearby, in a residential building, the frameless glasses man was holding his cell phone. Listening to the voice coming from the other side, he was pleasantly surprised and said, "You've succeeded? You're secretly escorting that woman, Zhao Jing, to the repair factory? Well done. However, since Zhao Jing was kidnapped by us, the police will definitely be alerted. So, we must conceal our whereabouts in these 2 days. My youngest sister and I will continue to stay here and monitor. This matter is related to Yuan Chuling. I believe that the police will inevitably contact my third brother. When the time comes, they will definitely come to the school to look for Yuan Chuling. I can't wait anymore. I want to see Yuan Chuling's angry face and the police's helpless face." Well, that's it, the call ended. The frameless glasses man wore a mocking expression on his face. His mind was thinking about the interesting things that would happen next. He didn't know that the content of his call was heard by Tan Xiao, who was outside the door. Got it? One Eye's actions are really fast. The transvestite man said with a happy face. The frameless glasses man sneered and said, "We're brothers. How can we not be fast?" However, that woman, Zhao Jing, is absolutely not simple. One Eye's group relied on a sneak attack to barely kill her 2 bodyguards. One Eye is also injured. What? One Eye is injured? He received training abroad in vain. How long are we going to monitor that Yuan Chuling kid? 2 more days. Who was Zhao Jing? Outside the door, Tan Xiao's eyes were filled with confusion. He racked his brains but couldn't remember this person. However, through the conversation between the frameless glasses man and the others, he figured out one thing, and that was that these murderers had kidnapped a woman. And this woman was most likely related to Yuan Chuling. What to do? If he dealt with these 2 guys now, he would definitely anger the other criminals. Perhaps, those villains would become angry out of shame and kill the woman named Zhao Jing. Tan Xiao weighed the pros and cons and finally decided not to make a move. Just now, the contents of the conversation between the 2 people in the room said that after 2 days of surveillance, he would be able to secretly follow them and catch all these criminals in one fell swoop. After leaving quietly, Tan Xiao was a little worried. Originally, he had snuck over to capture or kill the 2 criminals in charge of surveillance. With the credit, he could deny that he had lied to the homeroom teacher, Han Qingwu. But now he couldn't make a move. He was afraid that he had to appease Han Qingwu's mood. "Forget it, I'll send her a message." Tan Xiao took out his phone and rebooted it. He immediately wrote a message and sent it out. Xingxing No. 1 High School, Class 10. Han Qingwu stood on the podium with a frosty face. Looking at the faces below, she said coldly, "From now on, no one can skip class. You can't use leave as an excuse to skip class. If you violate this rule, you will have to clean the toilet for a week." In the classroom, dozens of students heard Han Qingwu's words. Not only were they not afraid, but they were also happy. They unanimously looked at Tan Xiao's seat. Some students even took pleasure in his misfortune and ridiculed. Tan Xiao must have angered Miss Han. He's really a good-for-nothing. He's extremely bold. If I were Miss Han, I would directly expel him. Tan Xiao had skipped class for many days before. Miss Han has a good character and didn't stoop to his level. Now he's even more lawless. I really hope Miss Han can punish him immediately. Miss Han's character is too good. She blindly tolerated Tan Xiao, but the result was worse. He's really a rat's shit. He stinks our whole class. How could there be such a rotten person in our class? Yuan Chuling listened to the discussion around him and was furious. If it weren't for the homeroom teacher, Han Qingwu, he might have stood up and violently beaten those students who talked dirty. Buzz. The vibration of her phone made Han Qingwu frown. She grabbed her phone and opened the message. Miss Han, I have something important to do. I can finish it in 3 days at most. Wait for me to come back and accept the punishment. Tan Xiu, Han Qingwu forgot that she was standing on the podium at the moment. When she saw the content of the message, she couldn't help but roar. After roaring, Han Qingwu suddenly realized that she was still under the gaze of the whole class. Thinking of her gaffe just now, she couldn't help but blush. Oh my God! What did I see? Miss Han actually showed a shy expression? Could it be that I didn't sleep well last night and am hallucinating today? Beautiful, so beautiful. Miss Han can actually be shy? And it makes the moon and flowers blush even more seductive. My little heart is jumping like a little deer. Miss Han should be the most beautiful goddess in this world, right? I'm finished. I won't like any other woman in this life. Oh yes, Miss Han just looked at her phone. She should have received a message. Then, is it a message from Tan Xiu to Miss Han? Miss Han called Tan Xiu's name? Then she showed a shy expression. Could it be? Impossible. How could Teacher Tang take a fancy to that mud Tan Xiu? Tan Xiu must have sent some indecent message to Miss Han that made Miss Han lose her composure. The bastard? Tang Xiu, you bastard. Yuan Chuling's face was gloomy just now, but when he heard the voices of his classmates, it suddenly turned cloudy, and then directly cleared up. From the bottom of his heart, he simply admired Boss Tan Xiu to the point of prostrating himself. To make Miss Han reveal a young girl yearning for love expression in this world, perhaps only Boss Tan Xiu could do this, right? In the future, I must learn more ways to pick up girls from Boss Tang. Yuan Chuling secretly decided. Outside the campus, Tan Xiu did not leave. He used his spiritual sense to observe the residential building. He found that not only was there no one, but the house was also in a mess, indicating that this house had been vacant for a long time. Therefore, with the help of his vigorous skills, he opened the window from the outside and slipped inside. He planned to stay here for the next 2 days and closely monitor the movements of the 2 people upstairs. At the same time, he also needed to find some useful talents as soon as possible. After carefully thinking about it, Tan Xiu dialed Long Zhengyu's cell number. Star City, in a 10-story building. Long Zhengyu was holding a cigarette between his fingers as he sat on a soft leather sofa, chatting with 2 friends of similar age from the imperial capital. Chui Baitao. You 2 don't believe me. I Long Zhengyu never boast. My little brother is definitely a dragon among men. Although I don't have much contact with him, nor have I known him for a long time, I can assure you that no one in the younger generation is better than him. Long Zhengyu said with a serious face. The handsome Chu Yi, who was wearing a suit, said with a faint smile, Young Master Long, we've known each other for more than 10 years, but this is the first time I've heard you praise someone so much. It seems that I must see him if I have the opportunity. I want to see if he's really as charming as you said. Bai Tao chuckled and said, I also want to see him. If he's really like what you said, young Master Long, I'll introduce my sister, who has eyes on the top of her head and looks down on any man, to him. Pa. You brat? Long Zhengyu couldn't help laughing. The 2 friends sitting opposite him were people from prominent families in the imperial capital. Similarly, they were also outstanding figures in the circle of young masters in the imperial capital. Even though their long family had been developing rapidly in recent years, they still couldn't be compared with these 2 families. Ring, ring, ring. A cell phone's ringtone interrupted the trio's conversation. Long Zhengyu furrowed his brows. He took out his cell phone and looked at it. A strange expression suddenly appeared on his face as he said with a smile, Speak of the devil and he'll call me. I'll pick it up first. After saying that, he picked up the phone and said with a smile, Brother Tang, how come you think of me today? Chief Long, I want to ask you a favor. Is it convenient for you? Brother Tang, I'm a few years older than you. If you don't mind, how about calling me Brother Long? Just tell me what you need my help with. As long as I, Long Zhengyu, can do it, I'll go through water and tread on fire. Brother Long, I'm looking for a professional manager in the business field. I'm short on money recently and want to do some small business, but I don't have much time to manage it. I can only entrust a trustworthy professional manager. You want to do business? Long Zhengyu suddenly stood up from the sofa as a glint flashed in his eyes. That's right. Long Zhengyu probed. I don't know if Brother Tang can tell me what kind of business you're going to do? Of course, it's fine if it's inconvenient. Cosmetics business, said Tan Xiu. Long Zhengyu was silent for a moment before he slowly said, I understand. Brother Tang, I'll dig a powerful professional manager for you in 3 days at the latest. Thanks a lot. Long Zhengyu hung up the phone and slowly sat back on the sofa. He was silently thinking about the news brought by Tan Xiu. He was perfectly aware that Tan Xiu was not short on money. If Tan Xiu needed it, he could even give him millions. For example, he could even refuse 5 million last time. But now, he said that he was short on money, which proved that the amount of money was absolutely huge. Therefore, the business he wanted to do must be very big, and he was very confident that he could make money. Should I get a share of it? Long Zhengyu's right hand stroked his chin as he pondered in silence. After a moment he made a decision. Chapter 57. Chu Yi and Bai Tao looked at each other. Facing Long Zhengyu, who had sunk into contemplation, the two of them were very puzzled. Through this phone call, they could deeply feel how much Long Zhengyu valued that youth. Young Master Long, what do you mean? Bai Tao was a straightforward person, so he asked directly. Long Zhengyu slowly said, he wants to do business, so he asked me to help him find a professional manager. I'm thinking which professional managers in Star City can be poached with a lot of money. Bai Tao couldn't help but laugh. Just this small matter? Leave it to me. I helped him poach one from the imperial capital. Chu Yi was a mature and meticulous man. Upon hearing the conversation between the two, his expression slightly moved and a thought to test Tan Xiu emerged in his mind. He let out a faint smile and said, let's find Kang Xia. If the Tan Xiu you speak of is really a character, I think it won't be a problem for him to take Tang Xia down. Kang Xia? Bai Tao exclaimed involuntarily. Long Zhengyu vaguely felt that the name, Tang Xia, was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it. With a bit of puzzlement he asked, this Kang Xia is, gulping down a mouthful of saliva, Bai Tao bitterly smiled. She's one of the top managers in the country. No, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe it as world-class. 3 years ago, when she returned from Wall Street, the world's financial center, she was hired by the Pangea Group at a high price. After taking over, she carried out the reorganization and reform of the Panzerhua Group in a swift and decisive manner. In less than 3 years, the scale of the Pangea Group has quadrupled. 2 months ago, the second young master of the Pangshur Group, the unlucky second young master Pang from the imperial capital, failed to woo Tang Xia, so he resorted to despicable means and attempted to drug Tang Xia. In the end, not only did she not succeed, but it also made Kang Xia furious, and she directly resigned from her job as the CEO of the Panzerhua Group. Now, that fat second young master has probably been beaten up by their family's old man to the point that he can't even get out of bed. The most surprising thing, and also the most frustrating thing, is that, when Kang Xia left the Pangea Group, everyone thought that they had a chance. However, no matter what methods other companies used and what price they paid, Kang Xia did not agree to join them. My father even promised her 10% of the company's shares, but she was indifferent. Long Zhengyu's pupils constricted, and his face was filled with shock. Others didn't know how enormous the capital of the Bai Group was, but he knew very well. Just 10% of the shares would be worth tens of figures. She's the one. Long Zhengyu immediately made the decision. Chu Yi lightly smiled and said, whether we can take her down or not, we still need to see Tan Xiu's ability. If he can take it down, I'll be convinced. If you can't take it down, I don't think there's a need to meet you. Long Zhengyu narrowed his eyes. He was good at reading people, but he couldn't see through Tan Xiu. In fact, he even felt like he was looking up to him. Therefore, that indescribable sense of worship grew, and he firmly said, I firmly believe that he can take it down. 2 days passed by slowly. During this period, Tan Xiu asked Ban's Ho, Ding Zi and the others to help him buy a lot of things. All of them were sent to the house where he was hiding. In the past 2 days, he had done hundreds of experiments and finally finalized the materials and configuration process for the 2 skincare products. Skin Clotting Centipede Scar Cream. This was the name given by Tan Xiao for the 2 products. The skincare lotion had a very strong whitening and moisturizing effect. Even those high-end whitening cosmetics in the society couldn't compare to 1/10 of its effect. The Scar Cream could repair scars, and also had acne and freckle removal effects. He believed that once these 2 products came out and were promoted to the society, it would definitely cause a great uproar. At that time, those who loved beauty or had scars on their bodies would definitely go all out to chase after them. I'm only a step away from the everything is ready except for the east wind. Startup funds. What I'm most lacking now is startup funds. Registering a company, establishing a factory, as well as advertising and promotion channels, etc., all of these require funds. The sum of money won't be small. Star City, Jean Emperor Villa Complex. As one of the best high-end villa complexes in Star City, the people who lived here were either rich or respectable. Any one of them, even if they just stomped their feet, could shake the entire Star City. In one of the villas, Yuan Jingxuan's expression was cold as he coldly looked at the 4 big men in suits standing in front of him. It's been 2 days. Are you all doing nothing? Keep searching. Even if you have to dig 3 feet into Star City, you must find the whereabouts of my wife. The 4 big men nodded submissively. At this time, a middle-aged woman in business attire strode into the hall. Chief Yuan, the City Public Security Bureau's Chief Deng Jianmin and the City Criminal Police Captain Qing Xueme have arrived. They're waiting outside. Yuan Jingxuan's complexion changed as he said in a deep voice, "Please come in quickly." After a moment, Deng Jianmin and Qing Xueme, with livid complexions, strode into the hall. It could be seen from their faces that their hearts were filled with rage. Upon seeing this, Yuan Jingxuan's mood turned heavier as he asked, "Is there any news, Chief Deng?" Deng Jianmin said with a bitter expression, "After the investigation, we've determined the identity of the kidnappers. They are A-class wanted criminals. This gang of human organ smugglers is also the target we are currently searching for. Although we haven't found their whereabouts for the time being, we've set up checkpoints at every exit passage in the city. We can be sure that they're still in Star City's downtown area." Yuan Jingxian was burning with anxiety. But he was, after all, a seasoned veteran in the underworld, so he was barely able to restrain his emotions. After a moment of silence, he said in a deep voice, "Chief Deng, I don't get it. Since these kidnappers smuggle human organs for a living, why would they suddenly kidnap my wife? My husband and I shouldn't have any grudges with them, right?" Deng Jianmin and Qing Xueme looked at each other. Qing Xueme said, "Mr. Yuan, if our inference is correct, the kidnappers should be related to your son." "Little Ling?" Yuan Zhengxian looked at Qing Xueme with a dumbfounded expression and asked with a confused expression, "What does this have to do with my son? He's just an ordinary student of Xingqing City No. 1 High School. How could he possibly be related to the kidnappers?" With a bit of an apologetic expression, Qing Xueme forced a smile and said, "A few days ago, a student of Xingqing City No. 1 High School was abducted by one of the kidnappers at school. Your son and another student acted against the murderer in order to save the student. In the end, they saved the student, but the murderer was killed by them. We can infer that the kidnappers are retaliating." Yuan Zhengxian exclaimed in disbelief, "That's impossible. How could my son kill someone?" Qing Xueme said, "To be precise, the murderer wasn't killed by Ling Sheng. He was killed by another student." Yuan Zhengxian grabbed his mobile and was about to call his son. Suddenly, he realized something and immediately looked at the 4 big men, saying in a deep voice, "You guys immediately rush to Xingqing City No. 1 High School and bring my son back. Remember, you must ensure his safety." "Understood." The 4 men immediately set off. Xingqing City No. 1 High School. The residents lived in the building. Tan Xiao looked at the messy scene in the living room as a sense of satisfaction involuntarily welled up inside him. He had been living in the immortal world for thousands of years, so he simply didn't care about such trivial matters. If there was a need, he would have a large number of subordinates at his disposal. Something's wrong. Tan Xiu's complexion suddenly changed. He was keenly aware that his mentality was undergoing a tremendous change. He used to look at everything with an indifferent attitude. But now, he found that he had become flesh and blood, and he was more like an ordinary person when it came to all kinds of emotional changes. In the room upstairs, the transvestite man was holding a mirror. His big white hand pinched his orchid fingers as he looked at Yuan Chuling in class 10 through the binoculars from time to time. What do you think that surnamed Tang Brat is doing? He hasn't come back since he left the school that day. Could it be that the incident with third brother last time scared that surnamed Tang Brat? The frameless glasses man's fingers were flying as he typed on the keyboard, leaving only after images. There were dozens of surveillance images on his computer. All of them were the surveillance cameras of the streets near Xingqing City No. 1 High School. This indicated that he had hacked into the City Traffic Police Brigade's surveillance system. He's just a kid. He hasn't experienced any major events, so he's dizzy just from seeing blood. That surnamed Tang Brat is a fool with a brain problem. Let's not waste time on such a small character. I'm just curious, when will those idiots from the City Public Security Bureau withdraw their surveillance cameras near the school? The transvestite man chuckled and said, "It's only been 2 days, yet the police have come to the school to investigate 4 times. Every time I see their disappointed appearance, I want to laugh out loud. Let me tell you." Suddenly, the transvestite man's voice abruptly stopped. He used the binoculars to carefully observe the scene in the school. The frameless glasses man frowned. He put down his laptop and came over. The transvestite man sneered and said, "It seems that Yuan Zhengxian is still very concerned about his ex-wife and son. He had actually sent his 4 subordinates to the school. I can be sure that the police have already told Yuan Zhengxian about what happened in the school." The frameless glasses man squinted his eyes and ridiculed, "How can these idiots deal with us brothers? If that brat Yuan Chuling is taken away, then there's no point in staying here to monitor him. We'll also withdraw." Alright. Class 10's classroom. Yuan Chuling was playing with a carbon pen in a bored manner. From time to time, his eyes would sweep to the window. The reason why he came to class 10 was mainly because Tan Xiu was transferred here. But in the past few days, Tang Xiu had unexpectedly disappeared again, leaving him without a companion to chat with. Yuan Chuling, come out. The teacher in charge, Han Qingwu, appeared outside the classroom. Yuan Chuling stared blankly for a moment. He immediately got up and walked outside. When he was about to speak, his complexion suddenly changed. Because he saw his father's 4 men behind Han Qingwu, as well as Cheng Xueme in her police uniform. Who was Cheng Xueme? She was the captain of the City Criminal Police Unit, a police officer responsible for serious cases. Something happened. It should be related to his family. "Yuan Chuling, your mother has been kidnapped. Come with us to your father's place." Cheng Xueme took the lead and said. Yuan Chuling's breath stagnated. Then he quickly said, "Who did it?" Cheng Xueme said, "Let's go. I'll tell you on the way." In a residential building outside the school. Tan Xiu had just tidied up his temporary room when he found that the 2 villains upstairs had packed their things and left the suite. It's time to solve these threats. Immediately, he followed them without hesitation. Chapter 58. Tan Xiu quietly followed behind the 2 slayers. He found that these 2 slayers were very careful and vigilant. It would be really difficult to follow them if he didn't have his spiritual sense to monitor them. They have a car? Tan Xiu was secretly annoyed as he watched the 2 men get on a Volkswagen. He noted down the car's license plate number and quickly bypassed them as he ran toward the gate of the residential complex. His luck was good as he met a taxi just as he left the residential complex. "Where are you going, little brother?" The fat driver turned around and asked with a smile. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes. His spiritual sense could sense that the car driven by the 2 slayers was about to come out. He directly took out a few 100 yuan bills from his wallet and handed them to the driver, saying, "Master, do you see that Volkswagen coming out of the gate of the residential complex? Follow it quietly. Don't lose it and don't let the people in the car find you." The fat driver hesitated. Little brother, you. Tan Xiu took out a few more bills from his wallet and handed them over again. He believed that money could make even the devil turn millstones. This truth was extremely useful whether it was in the current society or in the immortal world. Sure enough, the fat driver gritted his teeth and nodded. Don't worry, little brother. This big brother often encounters those guests who need help tracking others. Nowadays, if it's not a man who has an affair, it's a woman who has an affair. This kind of man and woman, they're just messing around blindly. The corner of Tan Xiu's mouth curled. He was very satisfied to be misunderstood as such. Following the driver's words, he pretended to be angry and said, if that stinky woman in the car is really having an affair, I'll break her dog legs. The worry in the fat driver's heart immediately vanished after hearing it. 10 minutes later, Tan Xiu frowned. The distance between the two cars was only 30 to 40 meters. Even if the taxi driver was very careful, it still aroused the vigilance of the slayer in front. Master, slow down. Widen the distance between us. The fat driver hesitated. Little brother, you have to think clearly. It's easy to lose them if the distance between us is too far. Don't worry, master, said Tan Xiu. We definitely won't lose them. The chubby driver was amused and smiled. Little brother, you don't have a driver's license, right? The car is in my hands. How can you be more confident than me? Tan Xiu smiled and did not say anything. Divine sense was like a cheat in life. So far, in this new era of the 21st century, he was the only one who had this ability, so he was naturally confident. A few minutes later, the smile on the chubby driver's face faded. He looked at the traffic light at the intersection and bitterly smiled. Little brother, I'm afraid we've lost them. Let's speed up after we pass this traffic light, said Tan Xiu lightly. The fat driver did not say anything. After the red light lasted for dozens of seconds, the taxi sped through the intersection and sped up. Soon, they met another traffic light at the crossroads in front of them. I can't see the car anymore, the fat driver said helplessly. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and lightly said, they didn't turn and are still moving forward. Just like before, speed up once we reach the intersection. The fat driver looked at Tan Xiu with a surprised expression. He really wanted to ask how Tan Xiu knew about it. At the next intersection. Prepare to turn left, master, said Tan Xiu in a deep voice. Turn left? The fat driver secretly rolled his eyes inwardly. Do you think you're a radar monitor? I can't even see where the car is going. How can you know? After moving forward, a satisfied smile appeared on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. His divine sense had once again captured the Volkswagen when the taxi sped up. At this time, the driver also relaxed his vigilance and no longer frequently looked at the rearview mirror. Master, turn right ahead. Turn left at the intersection ahead. Speed up and overtake the two cars ahead. After going around in circles for nearly half an hour, the fat driver finally couldn't bear it anymore. With an angry look on his face, he muttered, Little brother, are you kidding me? I haven't seen that car for half an hour. How are you going to catch up with it if you blindly command it? A smile appeared on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth as he chuckled and said, You're absolutely right to listen to me, master. You can see that car before the next intersection if you're willing to exceed the speed limit. The fat driver stared blankly for a moment. His eyes then shifted to the 700 to 800 yuan on the central control panel. He steeled his heart and said, Don't lie to me, little brother. If I do as you said but I don't see that car, you'll have to give me an additional 200 yuan. I'll pay the fine. Deal. Tan Xiu grinned. A few minutes later, the fat driver was dumbfounded as he stared at the Volkswagen tens of meters ahead. Disbelief filled his eyes. Slap, slap. Suddenly, while driving, he raised his hand and slapped his face a few times. The sound was particularly crisp because he used a lot of strength. Immediately after, a bit of redness appeared on his plump face. Am I dreaming? I can feel the pain. It's not a dream. How can he accurately judge the driving route of that Volkswagen? His eyes had been looking forward, and he absolutely didn't look at the mobile phone, tracker, or any other electronic devices. I'm driving this, little brother. Who is this god that descended to earth? The fat driver looked at Tan Xiao with eyes that were completely different from before. After a moment of silence, he probed, "Little brother, if I slow down the speed again, can you still judge the driving route of that car?" "No problem, but the distance can't be too far," answered Tan Xiao. The fat driver's mouth twitched a few times. He gave a thumbs up to Tan Xiao and praised, "I'm convinced. This big fatty Lu rarely admires people, but I'm convinced by you. You're a god. If everyone was like you, I'm afraid those companies selling electronic radars would have gone bankrupt." The tracking time took more than 2 hours. From the fat driver, Tan Xiao learned that the Volkswagen had turned a lot of places in the urban area, and some of the roads had taken detours twice. Finally, the taxi stopped near a dilapidated auto repair shop. "Little brother, are you sure that your girlfriend isn't a detective? Her anti-detection level is too high. Even an old driver like me, who is very familiar with Star City's road conditions, would have been left behind dozens of streets if it weren't for your guidance," said the fat driver with a forced smile. Tan Xiao faintly smiled and thanked the fat driver. Then he watched him leave. After that, he bypassed the auto repair shop and quietly approached it from the back. The dilapidated auto repair shop was filled with a rotten smell. A bare-chested man with muscles all over his body was sweating profusely. He was holding a repair tool in his hand and was repairing a pickup truck. In the innermost side of the shed, there was a space of hundreds of square meters, and dilapidated auto parts could be seen everywhere. In the innermost corner, Zhao Jing was tied up with a rag stuffed in her mouth. Her clothes could still be considered neat, but there were several big footprints on it, as well as her red and swollen face, indicating that she had been beaten. The 2 men who were watching over her were men who reeked of alcohol. On the table in front of them, there were a lot of empty wine bottles and cigarette boxes. In addition, there were also 2 pistols and several Mitsubishi Army knives. "1, you said our youngest sister should have finished watching the fun, right? Shouldn't we implement our plan and record the video of this woman's dismemberment and internal organs? I'm sure that when we send the video to Yuan Zhengxian and Yuan Chuling, the father and son's expression will be very wonderful." The one-eyed man wearing sunglasses let out a cruel smile. His eyes swept over the Mitsubishi Army knives and coldly said, "This time, we'll take revenge for third brother, so the task of using the knife will be handed over to our youngest sister. Don't look at his usual cross-dresser appearance, but his knife skill is the best among us. I'm not satisfied with cutting her alive 360 times, so I'll make our youngest sister cut her 3,600 times and torture her to death." Bang! The shed's door was kicked open. The frameless glasses man, carrying a computer bag, strode inside. Following behind him was the transvestite man, who was carrying a big travel bag. "Yo, younger sister, you're back? How was the show?" The transvestite man threw the travel bag and proudly said with a smile, "Of course it was great." Those idiot policemen went back and forth to Xingqing No. 1 High School 4 or 5 times, yet they couldn't find anything. You don't know, but every time they left, their faces were as if their parents had died. The frameless glasses man swept the wine bottles on the table. After putting away the computer, he said, "Now we can confirm that Yuan Chuling has been picked up by the police and his father's men." The transvestite man used the binoculars to observe their mouths and got the result that Yuan Chuling has been taken to Yuan Jingshuan's place. One Eye sneered, "You're worthy to be a family. Our informants in the Public Security Bureau said that Yuan Zhengxian has been anxious and almost went crazy because of this woman. It's a pity that his heart is good, so he didn't vomit blood and die tragically." The transvestite man said, "One Eye, when did we dissect this woman? After we kill this woman and that father and son surnamed Yuan, I'm going to kill that Tang brat." One Eye frowned and said, "You mean that brat named Tan Xiao? He's a fool, why do you want to kill him? According to the information we've investigated, he's not the one who killed third brother." The transvestite man shook his head and said, "One Eye, I don't feel comfortable with Tan Xiao being alive." One Eye waved and said, "Kill him or not, we'll talk about it later. I'll leave the task of dissecting this woman to you. Old 6, you'll be responsible for recording the video. Remember to do a close-up shot of the woman's painful expression. I want to make that bastard Yuan Chuling feel as if his heart is being twisted by a knife, making him suffer so much that he'll wish he was dead. The transvestite man rolled his eyes and sat on the chair. He then gestured to the frameless glasses man and said, "Old Six, this woman is a genuine mature woman. Her appearance and figure are both good. Don't tell me you don't want to play first?" The frameless glasses man chuckled and said, "Fifth brother knows me the best." The transvestite man scolded with a smile, "Bastard brat, now you know how to call me fifth brother." Chapter 59. Zhao Jing, who was tied up and thrown in the corner, listened to the conversation between the frameless glasses man and the transvestite man. Her heart suddenly gave birth to a strong sense of fear. She had seen the extent of these people's ruthlessness. On the day she was caught, she saw a young girl being ravaged and dismembered. That bloody scene, even if she was experienced and knowledgeable, made her retch for a long time. She prayed that her husband Yuan Zhengxian or the police could find this place and save her life. However, the conversation between these people made her feel like she had fallen into a bottomless abyss. Woo-woo, Zhao Jing's mouth was gagged. She wanted to curse but couldn't. Therefore, she could only use her murderous eyes to stare at the frameless glasses man who was walking step by step. 2 minutes later, Zhao Jing was dragged by the frameless glasses man to the dissection room next door. In the dissection room, blood could be seen everywhere. All kinds of dissection equipment were thrown all over the floor. It was a mess. In the innermost side, there was a sponge cushion full of dirt. Zhao Jing was directly thrown on top of the sponge cushion. Dying under a peony flower and becoming a ghost is still romantic. It doesn't feel strange to use this sentence on you women. Today, I will let you fuck first, then I will let you die wailing. Saying that, he grabbed a pair of scissors and cut the rope that tied Zhao Jing. However, he didn't cut the rope that tied her hands and feet. Tan Xiu hid under the dissection room's rear window. His divine sense had already shrouded a radius of 100 meters. Even with his keen hearing, he could clearly hear the conversation between the 5 people in the auto repair shop. He didn't expect that the kidnapped woman turned out to be Yuan Chuling's mother. Moreover, he didn't expect that this group of kidnappers would actually mistake the person who killed third brother as Yuan Chuling. Previously, Tan Xiu didn't rush to make a move. With his current cultivation, he still couldn't avoid bullets. Moreover, there were 3 pistols in front of the 5 murderers. If there were only 1 or 2, he might not give the murderers a chance to shoot with lightning speed. If all 3 guns were fired at the same time, he would either die or be seriously injured. But now there was no threat. Tan Xiu smashed the rear window in the blink of an eye when the frameless glasses man was tearing Zhao Jing's clothes. Moreover, he rushed in at an extremely fast speed. What? The frameless glasses man's strength was not his strength. Although he had killed many people, he had always tied them up and dissected them. His forte lay in his computer technology and intelligence network. Tan Xiu's speed was too fast, and he accurately tore open his throat, so he only managed to shout 1 word before his voice abruptly stopped. Bang! Tan Xiu lifted his right leg and lashed out at the frameless glasses man's face, sending him flying and crashing into the hard wall. He did not even look at the rimless glasses man, who was still alive and was clutching his throat with both hands. Instead, he turned to Zhao Jing's side and gestured for her to keep quiet. Then, he removed the cloth from her mouth. For you. Zhao Jing was ecstatic that her savior had fallen from the sky. She had received Tan Xiu's signal, so she kept her voice extremely low. Tan Xiu whispered, "You don't need to know who I am. You only need to know that I'm here to save you. I'll untie the ropes on your hands and feet, and then you can escape from this back window." Zhao Jing quickly asked, "What about you?" Tan Xiu said with a heavy tone, "These people are all villains. Leaving them alive will only bring disaster to the world. I must get rid of them all." Zhao Jing involuntarily said, "You don't want to live anymore? There are still 4 of them here. Moreover, they have knives and guns, and bullets don't have eyes. You'll escape with me. We'll immediately call the police after we get out. There's also my husband. He has a lot of bodyguards." Weren't they divorced? A surprised expression flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. He shook his head and said, I just eavesdropped on their conversation. I know that they have spies in the Public Security Bureau. Once we call the police, they will immediately receive the news and flee. Now is the best time to catch them in one fell swoop. I can't let them go. Don't worry. I can deal with these jumping clowns. Zhao Jing's complexion changed. She didn't expect that these kidnappers were so resourceful that they even had spies in the Public Security Bureau. Then, you be careful. After saying that, with Tan Xiu's help, she smoothly escaped from the back window. Inside the shack, the transvestite man, the one-eyed man, and the others were sitting comfortably, smoking and drinking. They had strange smiles on their faces as they glanced at the door leading to the dissecting room next door from time to time. Among them, the one who couldn't control his little brother the most was the sixth brother. How come there's no movement? Every time sixth brother tossed and turned, didn't he always make a big noise? The one-eyed man slowly realized that the situation was not right as he spoke with a surprised expression. The transvestite man said with a sinister smile, Sixth brother's condition is probably not good. He'll be done in 2 or 3 seconds. If I were a woman, I would absolutely not look at sixth brother, that kind of embroidered pillow. A 3-second shot. The one-eyed man was naturally suspicious. His complexion turned solemn as he shook his head and said, I don't think it's right. Fourth brother, come with me to take a look. The drunken man staggered and followed the one-eyed man as they walked to the dissecting room next door. Conveniently, he also grabbed the pistol on the table. Bang! The door was kicked open by the one-eyed man as the drunken man swaggered into the room. When his blurred vision fell on the body of the frameless glasses man, his pupils instantly shrunk and his body instantly tensed up. Puff! A sharp knife pierced the drunken man's heart without any symptoms. The tip of the knife stirred and instantly smashed his heart. Then, a heavy punch hit his chest, sending his body flying toward the one-eyed man outside the door. Bastard! The one-eyed man's complexion crazily changed. He grabbed a Mitsubishi Army knife from his waist lightning fast. After sweeping the drunken man's body, he roared and rushed toward Tan Xiu. At the same time, the Phoenix man and the middle-aged big man also grabbed a knife and a gun and rushed over after hearing the commotion. You're like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. You're overestimating your own capabilities. Tan Xiu's cultivation had reached the peak of qi cultivating stage. Apart from his formidable strength, his speed had also broken through the limit of ordinary people. He didn't use any specific moves because his martial arts realm was at his fingertips. His keen eyes locked onto the Mitsubishi Army knife that was suffused with a cold light. While dodging at an extremely fast speed, the knife in his hand instantly tore open the wrist of the one-eyed man who was holding the knife. What? The one-eyed man felt a heart-wrenching pain. The moment the Mitsubishi Army knife fell, he instantly retreated. He had already recognized Tan Xiu, but he felt that if he wasn't dreaming, then he must have drunk too much. Because he thought that Tan Xiu was an idiot who had gotten into a car accident and his brain was damaged. Don't move. The transvestite man, who was tens of meters away, pointed the black muzzle at Tan Xiu and shouted. Tan Xiu sneered and retreated at the same time. Without the slightest hesitation, he jumped out of the dissecting room's rear window. Without the strength to dodge bullets and before reaching the second layer of Star's tyrannical body, he absolutely wouldn't foolishly confront the gunman head-on. Assassination. Sneak attack. It wasn't like he hadn't done this kind of thing in the cruel world of immortal cultivators. Even in those special terrains and dangerous hopeless situations, he only narrowly escaped death every time. Where is he? The transvestite man and the one-eyed man met up. After rushing into the dissecting room, they immediately found the rear window with broken glass. A murderous glint appeared on the one-eyed man's face as he said in a heavy tone, No matter how much we calculated, we didn't expect him to be an expert. It seems that our previous information was wrong. The transvestite man looked at the corpses of his 2 brothers on the ground. Grief and anger made his face twist. He hatefully shouted, One-eyed, was the person I just saw Tan Xiu? That bastard whom you think is an idiot? Is he the one who killed Old 5 and Old 6? The one-eyed man nodded and said, That's right. He's the Tan Xiu we've investigated before. He regretted it. Now, his heart was full of regret. If there was a medicine for regret in this world, he would absolutely be willing to spend all his money to buy it. Because after taking the medicine for regret, he wouldn't ignore Tan Xiu. He wouldn't ignore that student whom he thought was an idiot. He's just an idiot. In his mind, he thought back to what he had said before. Invisibly, it was as if a pair of palms had ruthlessly slapped his face, making him ashamed and hating himself. The transvestite man shouted in a flustered and exasperated manner, "I warned you! But you all thought he was an idiot, a student without the strength to even truss a chicken. What about now? A fool can kill old 5 and old 6? Can he rescue that bitch Xiao Jing without anyone knowing?" His words made the one-eyed man even more remorseful. Looking at the corpses of his 2 brothers, his eyes turned red. He angrily rushed out of the door and sternly shouted, "Tan Xiu, if you're a man, then get the fuck out here for this father. My old man will definitely break your balls." However, apart from the empty echo, there was no sign of Tan Xiu. Although the transvestite man was furious, he didn't lose his reason. He was the most cautious and rational person among the group of brothers. Maintaining his vigilance, he followed at the one-eyed man's side and spoke with a sinking tone. "One-eyed, Tan Xiu is hiding in the dark while we're in the light. This situation is very disadvantageous for us. I think we should immediately retreat now. A gentleman's revenge is never too late even after 10 years. Even if we're not good people, we still have to plan our revenge." The one-eyed man grabbed his injured wrist with his other hand as he walked toward the middle of the shack and said, "What are you afraid of? We have guns in our hands now. If we don't fight to the death with that brat today, how can we have the face to retreat? We won't go. We 3 are afraid of him, an idiot. Why should we be afraid of him?" The strong man also shouted with an angry face. 2 idiots. The transvestite man cursed inwardly. He recalled the time when he was spying on Class 10 of Xingqing No. 1 High School. Tan Xiu looked at him from a kilometer away. Suddenly his body felt a bit cold and his mood became heavier. If Tan Xiu had really seen him from a kilometer away, then he was definitely not a fool, but a terrifying monster instead. Fighting with such a monster would only be courting death. Just like his 3rd brother, old 5, and old 6. Chapter 60. The transvestite thought of retreating sprouted from the bottom of his heart. However, he was well aware of the one-eyed duo's character. Once they decided on something, it would be absolutely impossible for them to change their minds. In order to save his life, he must seize the opportunity and then run away alone. As long as he could escape from here, as long as he could get rid of Tan Xiu, there was no place he couldn't go in this big world. If the one-eyed duo also died here, it wouldn't be too late for him to come back and take revenge on Tan Xiu after he became powerful. Bang! Dozens of meters away from the left side of the 3 men, a dull sound came from the messy pile of car parts. Over there. The complexion of the 3 men changed. They maintained a high level of vigilance and locked their eyes on the source of the sound. The bold and ruthless one-eyed called out to his 2 companions. He held the Mitsubishi Army knife in his left hand and walked toward the source of the sound. They didn't notice that a pair of eyes was staring at them from the gap between the frames of 2 dilapidated cars a dozen meters in front of them. "Boss one-eyed, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. We have 3 knives and 2 guns. Even if that brat can fight, he won't be our match." The strong man's face was ferocious. His killing intent was so terrifying that it could devour one's soul. Among his group of brothers, his martial strength was definitely at the peak. However, just as he finished speaking, a figure suddenly appeared like a bolt of lightning. A swift and fierce kick came from his left side. The strong man subconsciously raised his left arm to block it. The sound of bones breaking resounded. At the same time, a sharp knife stabbed into his left armpit in a tricky and strange path. A mournful scream was heard, making people's hair stand on end. Tan Xiu's killing intent was very strong. He was very skilled in judging the course of the fight. The moment the sharp knife was pulled out from the strong man's armpit, His feet moved and his fierce fist directly smashed the strong man toward the one-eyed and transvestite. Damn, one-eyed's complexion changed. He hastily dodged the strong man's smashing body, waved the Mitsubishi Army knife, and fiercely stabbed at Tanshio. He was not sure that he would be able to stab Tanshio, but he believed that as long as he could entangle Tanshio, the transvestite would be able to shoot Tanshio. Bang, bang, bang. The transvestite indeed shot at Tanshio, but his hasty shot was easily dodged by Tanshio. One-eyed hadn't expected that the transvestite would run toward the warehouse's door the moment he opened fire. As long as there's life, there's hope. Tanshio's unpredictability, as well as his ferocious slaughter, had cast a huge psychological shadow on the transvestite. Youngest sister, Fu? One-eyed took advantage of the time when Tanshio dodged the bullets and retreated several steps in an instant. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that his sworn brother, whom he had been through life and death with, would actually abandon them and escape alone. At this moment, he hated Tanshio, and even more hated the transvestite who had betrayed them and fled alone. Tanshio also didn't expect that the transvestite would choose to escape at this time. If he hadn't run away, it would have taken him a lot of effort to deal with the three of them. But now, Tanshio coldly smiled. The combination of speed and strength allowed him to easily knock down the already heavily injured one-eyed and the strong man. Moreover, he left both of them with fatal injuries. He can't run away. Tanshio kicked one-eyed until he fainted, then rushed toward the direction in which the transvestite had fled. Within the range of his divine sense, the transvestite had only run 50 or 60 meters away. For him, this distance was too close. He sprinted and chased. During the chase, the distance between the two was getting closer and closer. The transvestite who was running in front turned his head in panic and found that Tanshio's speed was extremely fast. He was suddenly overwhelmed with shock. At the same time, he secretly cursed one-eyed and the strong man for being useless. They didn't even give him much time. His eyes lit up and he suddenly rushed toward the nearby Volkswagen. After rushing inside the car at an extremely fast speed, he immediately started the car and locked the door from the inside. Bye-bye. The transvestite tilted his head and started the car while laughing at Tanshio in a provocative manner. Tanshio coldly snorted and the knife in his hand instantly flew out. With his 3,000 pounds of strength, the knife pierced through the driver's seat glass and accurately hit the transvestite's neck. Boom! The Volkswagen had already started, but after the transvestite was hit, the engine roared and crashed into another pickup truck. I told you, you can't escape. Tanshio sprinted to the driver's seat window of the Volkswagen and grabbed the transvestite's hair. He forcefully pulled his head out of the window and then fiercely punched him in the head. After dealing with the transvestite, Tanshio directly returned to the warehouse. Although he had dealt with these villains, he still needed to get some information from the one-eyed man and the strong man's mouth. Who was the mole of the Public Security Bureau? Don't struggle. Today is the day you die. The only difference is whether you die a happy death or suffer a torturous death. I'm sure you're already prepared to be killed for what you've done. So, before you die, I'll give you the last choice. The strong man let out a bitter smile. He looked at the wound on his body and sneered, "Suffer a torturous death? My injury is fatal. Even if you wanted to cough, cough. You can't even stall for time. A multiple-choice question is just a joke." Tanshio slightly squinted his eyes as his finger instantly touched an acupoint near the strong man's wound. What? The strong man's eyes turned as big as a copper bell and his face was full of panic. He found that after Tanshio touched a few times on his body, the bleeding wound unexpectedly stopped. Tanshio coldly said, "You don't have to believe it, but I'll make you believe it. If I don't want you to die so quickly, I can keep you alive for at least 2 hours. In 2 hours, I can dissect you bit by bit. I can still keep you conscious and watch the flesh and blood on your body diminish." The strong man desperately swallowed his saliva and said with amazement, "Acupoint? You just used an acupoint technique? Who are you?" Tanshio said, "I didn't expect that you actually know acupoint technique." With a bit of awe in his eyes, the strong man coughed up a mouthful of blood and said, "I once had an internal martial arts master who knew acupoint technique. Although it's not as magical as the legends say, the effect is still good. I hate that he never wanted to teach me the internal martial arts cultivation method. Why? Tan Shio's interest was piqued. The strong man hatefully said, "What else can it be? That old guy thinks that I have a bad character and am cruel and merciless. If I'm not cruel and merciless, how can I survive in this dog-eat-dog society? How can I eat and drink well?" Bad character? Tan Shio suddenly realized that the situation on Earth was indeed like this, especially for martial arts practitioners. Being ruthless and competitive was a taboo for martial arts practitioners. However, he didn't think so. The environment in the immortal cultivation world was tens of thousands of times crueler than that on Earth. It was a real dog-eat-dog world. Only by being ruthless, strong, and cautious could one survive. The reason why he could become a supreme immortal in the immortal world was because he had stepped on a sea of blood and mountains of corpses. Let's get back to the topic. Tell me, who are your informants in the Public Security Bureau? Don't worry. Tan Shio, am a man of my words. I won't let you suffer as long as you tell me honestly. The strong man dejectedly said, "The winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. It's not an injustice for us to lose to you. I can tell you, but you have to promise me one thing." "You're not qualified to talk terms with me," Tan Shio indifferently said. The strong man straightforwardly said, "Kill me or cut me into pieces as you wish. It won't be a loss if I can feel the unbearable pain before I die." Tan Shio frowned. He didn't want to waste any more time here. After rescuing Zhao Jing, he believed that she would call the police. Perhaps, it wouldn't be long before a large number of police arrived. After returning to this world, he was very clear about one thing: killing people was against the law. Even if he did it to save people, even if these people were all vicious criminals, it would still be very troublesome for him to kill so many people. "What's the condition?" Tan Shio indifferently said. The strong man bitterly said, "In fact, it's not a condition. It's just a request. Boss One Eye and I are in the same predicament today. I'm afraid we're both doomed. After we die, I hope you can find some time to go to Fengcheng County in northern Jiangsu. Boss One Eye's grandmother lives there, and she's also his only relative." "Is that it?" Tan Shio asked. "That's it." The strong man said, "I've hidden hundreds of thousands of cash in the innermost hole in the wall. Give some to One Eye's grandmother when you see her." "I promise you." Tan Shio nodded. He was very clear that human nature had two sides. No matter who it was, even if they were vicious and wicked, they would have a soft side deep in their hearts. For example, he had killed countless people and could even be called cold-blooded. But the one he missed the most was his mother. The strong man heavily nodded. Li Tao from the Public Security Bureau's Intelligence Division. Tan Shio didn't speak again. He grabbed the Mitsubishi Army knife on the ground and directly ended the strong man's life. Then he woke up One Eye. You deserve to die?" One Eye woke up from his coma and found that the strong man was dead, and the transvestite's body was thrown to the side. Suddenly, his heart felt like it had fallen into an abyss and was abnormally cold. Tan Shio said, "Tell me, who's your spy in the Public Security Bureau?" One Eye's eyes were full of hatred as he crazily roared, "Dream on! I'll never tell you. Just wait. Even if we die, he'll do everything he can to avenge us. Just you wait, sooner or later, he'll make you pay with your blood." Tan Shio coldly said, "Northern Jiangsu's Pengcheng your grandmother." "What?" One Eye incredulously looked at Tan Shio. Fear invaded every nerve in his body like a tide. Even among these brothers, only one person knew about his grandmother's existence. But how did this bastard know about it? "Are you a human or a ghost?" Tan Shio gave One Eye a pondering smile and said, "I'm sitting in a hole and looking at the sky. If I want to, even a ghost's soul will fly away and scatter." Chapter 61. Star City, Jin Emperor Villa Complex. Yuan Jingxuan's face was as gloomy as water, and his heart was filled with anxiety. The longer it was since his wife, Zhao Jing, was kidnapped, the more dangerous it was. He hated those kidnappers, but he hated himself and the police even more for their incompetence. So far, he had not found the whereabouts of his wife, Zhao Jing. He had already received confirmation that the kidnappers who kidnapped his wife were in cahoots with the culprit at Xingqing No. 1 High School. He had already guessed that the other party had kidnapped his wife for revenge. Yiling, you still can't contact that classmate of yours? Yuan Zhengxian asked in a deep voice as he looked at his son who was repeatedly dialing his phone. Yuan Chuling shook his head bitterly. I can't get in touch with him. His phone is still turned off. Dad, the time when Tang Xiu left school was the same time when my mom was kidnapped. Do you think there's any coincidence in between? Yuan Zhengxian didn't say anything. He just looked at Deng Jianmin, the director of the Public Security Bureau, and Qing Xuemei, the captain of the criminal police team, who hadn't left yet. There's not much hope. The location where Zhao Jing was kidnapped was near the company. At that time, Tan Xiu was at Xingqing No. 1 High School. The distance between the two places was dozens of kilometers. Unless Tan Xiu was able to predict the future, it would be very difficult to link this incident with Zhao Jing's kidnapping. Besides, he's just a student, a high school student. Deng Jianmin said in a low voice. But Tan Xiu is also missing, said Yuan Jingxian. Haven't the police been looking for him for 2 or 3 days? We haven't found it yet. Cheng Xuemei said, it's really strange. We've sent someone to his house to investigate. He hasn't come home. Even his mother doesn't know where he is. Ring, ring, ring. Yuan Jingshuan's cell phone suddenly rang. Yuan Jingshuan's expression changed. He rushed to the coffee table and grabbed his phone. When he saw an unfamiliar number, he frowned. Answer it. Deng Jianmin quickly came over. Yuan Zhengxian pressed the answer button and turned on the loudspeaker mode, saying in a deep voice, I'm Yuan Zhengxian. Who are you? Hubby, it's me. I'm Zhao Jing. Yuan Jingshuan's pupils instantly contracted as he hurriedly shouted, What? Jinga? You're Jinger? Where are you? Tell me, where are you? Hubby, I'm taking a taxi to your place right now. I borrowed this phone from the driver. Jing who did the kidnappers let you out? Do you know how anxious I've been these past few days? Hubby, it wasn't those kidnappers who let me go. It was someone else who saved me. By the way, quickly send someone to the abandoned auto repair shop on Deep Red Road in the peaceful Serene district. My savior is still there. By the way, don't call the police. My savior told me that there are spies in the police station for the kidnappers. Deng Jianmin and Qing Xuemei held their breaths, their eyes filled with disbelief. Are there informants for the kidnappers in the police station? How was this possible? Suddenly, the two of them realized that during this period of time when they were chasing these murderers who sold human organs, these murderers always seemed to be able to get the news in advance and escape before the police arrived. Could it be? Is there really a traitor in the police station? Yuan Zhengxian angrily glared at Deng Jianmin and Qing Xuemei as he said in a deep voice, I'll immediately notify the people to rush to the auto repair shop. Jing? Where's the taxi you took now? Tell me the license plate number, I'll send someone. No, I'll personally rush there to meet you. All right. The call ended. Yuan Zhengxian angrily said, You police officers are really good. You even have a traitor among your people. It's a very good continental version of infernal affairs. You've also heard my wife's words. I don't want your people to follow her. I'll send someone to deal with the auto repair shop. No way. Deng Jianmin's face turned pale, but he still spoke in a tough tone. Cheng Xuemei hesitated for a moment. Seeing that Yuan Zhengxian was about to explode, she quickly said, Mr. Yuan, since the auto repair shop is in a critical situation, I think the police should go there to support them. The identities of those kidnappers are not simple. All of them are A-class wanted criminals, and their hands are stained with blood. How about this? All of my criminal police members are elites who have been following me for several years. They have clean backgrounds and absolutely no traitors among them. How about we rush there with you? Yuan Zhengxian hesitated for a moment before he nodded and said, All right, but I hope that I won't inform anyone except for you. I'll go too, said Deng Jianmin hurriedly. In the abandoned auto repair shop on Deep Red Cloud Street in the peaceful Serene district, Tan Xiu looked at the ashen face of the one-eyed man and coldly said, I've given you the chance. Tell me, else you'll know the consequences. The one-eyed man fell into silence. He didn't want to betray his brother. He was still looking forward to his brother to help him take revenge. However, he was perfectly aware of how ruthless this young man was. If he didn't tell him, he was afraid that this young man would really harm his grandmother. He was raised by his grandmother since he was a child, and the person he cared about the most in his heart was her. What should I do? The one-eyed man's heart was in turmoil as he fell into deep hesitation. I'll count down from 3. If you haven't answered my question, then you don't need to. I'll make the choice for you. Of course, I can tell you that your companion has already told me who your spy is in the police station. I just want to confirm it. Tan Xiu's voice was like a heavy hammer. Each of his words heavily hit the one-eyed man's heart. 3, 2, 1, I'll tell you. The one-eyed man felt a stabbing pain in his heart. But at the last moment he still chose to protect his grandmother. Speak. Tan Xiu coldly said. Who is it? The one-eyed man gritted his teeth and said, Li Tao, the deputy chief of the Public Security Bureau's Intelligence Division. Sure enough, it's him. Tan Xiu sneered. The Mitsubishi Army knife tore the one-eyed man's throat and pierced his heart. After killing the one-eyed man, he followed the instructions of the strong man and found a bundle of cash in a plastic bag in the innermost hole in the wall. Then he left the place. In fact, if these criminals weren't a threat to him, he wouldn't have bothered to deal with them. Of course, after knowing that Yuan Chuling's mother was kidnapped, he would have acted even more. However, the most important thing for him now was to make money. He needed to cultivate, and cultivation required a lot of medicinal herbs and precious ores. Only by making a lot of money would he be able to buy these necessities and be able to cultivate without any hindrance. He had already planned out a plan to make money. Now, he just lacked a professional manager to help him manage his business. However, he entrusted the matter of looking for a professional manager to Long Zhengyu. Calculating the time, Long Zhengyu should have already found a suitable professional manager for him. Half an hour later, Tan Xiu threw his bloody coat into the river and watched it wash away. He didn't go back to the campus but went straight back to his villa in Southgate Town. As Tan Xiu entered the villa's hall, he found that there was some dust in the house. At this time, he remembered that before this villa was handed over to him, the property management had always sent people to clean it. However, since he became the owner of this villa, the property management had no obligation to send people to clean it. Such a big house, even if I want to find a housekeeper, I'm afraid it won't be enough, right? Do I have to be like those characters in the TV series, looking for a professional housekeeper? Should I let the housekeeper arrange the cleaning of this villa? Tan Xiu shook his head with a wry smile. He wasn't so extravagant that he could hire a housekeeper. He went straight upstairs and took a bath. Long Zhengyu had sent people to fill the wardrobe with clothes in advance, so he picked out a clean casual wear and put it on. The villa's master bedroom was on the 2nd floor. The entire master bedroom had an area of hundreds of square meters, and the decoration had reached an outrageous level of luxury. Tan Xiu hadn't had a good rest these past few days, so he was ready to take a break. By the way, he would contact Long Zhengyu and ask him about the arrangement of the professional manager. Thinking of contacting Long Zhengyu, he remembered that his mobile phone had long been turned off. He took out his mobile phone and turned it on. But before he dialed Long Zhengyu's number, a series of missed calls and text messages rang nonstop. Tan Xiu recalled that there were a lot of missed calls when he was cultivating last time. He didn't expect that after such a long time, this kind of situation would appear again. He looked at all the missed calls and revealed a helpless expression. Apart from Han Qingwu and Long Zhengyu, there were a few other unknown numbers who had called him. These unknown numbers had been dialed quite a few times, more than a dozen times. Yuan Chuling called me 42 times? It seems like he knows that his mother has been kidnapped. Perhaps he also guessed that my absence from school for 2 to 3 days has something to do with his mother's disappearance. Tan Xiu thought about it and decided not to contact Yuan Chuling for the time being. Anyway, he had already rescued his mother, so there shouldn't be any more accidents. As for Han Qingwu, he had used her, so she might be angry and wanted to give him a good scolding. He didn't have to contact her for the time being. Half a minute later, Tan Xiu dialed Long Zhengyu's number. Brother Long, I'm Tan Xiu. I've troubled you to help me find a professional manager. How's it going? Brother Tang, you've finally taken the initiative to contact me. I've called you a few times, but your phone is turned off. The professional manager is a bit special. Can we meet and talk about it? Long Zhengyu's tone was a bit excited, as if he had encountered a good thing. Special? A surprised expression flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes as he slowly said, "All right, let's meet now. Where are you?" "I'll find you. I'm at the property management office in Southgate Town," Long Zhengyu said with a smile. 10 minutes, said Tan Xiu. After hanging up the phone, Tan Xiu hesitated for a moment before he dialed another number. It was an unfamiliar number, but it was the one that had called him the most. "Hello? Are you Tan Xiu?" The call was connected. Before Tan Xiu could speak, a hurried female voice came from the other side. "It's me. Who are you?" Chapter 62. In this materialistic era, the music composed by power and money resounded in everyone's heart. It seemed that everyone was equal, but when one reached a certain level, one would understand one thing. In this world, there was a hierarchy. Although Gu Yuetao was not at the top of the food chain, but as the only son of the first secretary of the municipal government, how could he not understand this truth? With a bit of probing, he asked in a low voice, "Young Master Long values a friend, so he must be a big shot. Wait for young Master Long to introduce one or two." Long Zhengyu nodded his head in affirmation. Gu Yuetao's conduct was as clear as a mirror in his heart. Relying on his good reincarnation skills, Gu Yuetao could be said to be arrogant and despotic in Star City. In recent years alone, the number of bad things he had done was hard to count. If it wasn't for his father cleaning up his mess, he would have spent the rest of his life in prison. Coming. 7 to 8 minutes later, Long Zhengyu was happy and immediately got up to greet Tan Xiu, who was coming from afar. "Big brother Long." Tan Xiu found it a bit funny inside. He was already more than 10,000 years old, yet now he was reduced to calling a 20-year-old brat brother. Long Zhengyu said with a smile, "Brother Tang, wanting to see you is harder than ascending to the heavens. Even Jing Lin called you many times, but no one picked up." With a bit of apology, Tan Xiu said, "I'm sorry, I don't have the habit of using a mobile phone. I didn't find it because there was no electricity." "Who's this?" Long Zhengyu glanced at Gu Yuetao and said, "He's Gu Yuetao, my friend. The reason why I came to Southgate Town is because a friend of mine wants to sell a house. Gu Yuetao wants to buy it, so I came to help." Tan Xiu suddenly understood. He nodded to Gu Yuetao and asked, "Am I disturbing you?" Long Zhengyu said with a smile, "It's okay." Gu Yuetao didn't expect that the friend Long Zhengyu valued turned out to be such a young man. Although he felt that this young man had an extraordinary bearing, he still looked down on him. He nodded perfunctorily and casually asked, "Little brother Tang doesn't look too old, does he? Where do you work?" "Little brother Tang?" Tan Xiu slightly wrinkled his brows. He felt a bit of indifference towards Gu Yuetao from the bottom of his heart. He could accept Long Zhengyu addressing him as younger brother Tang, because he had some friendship with Long Zhengyu and also because of Long Jinglin. But Gu Yuetao, relying on his age to speak frivolously, was truly repulsive. "Student." Tan Xiu answered casually for the sake of Long Zhengyu. Gu Yuetao was keenly aware of Tan Xiu's attitude, and he suddenly felt angry in his heart. However, he restrained himself and didn't flare up before figuring out Tan Xiu's specific identity. He then lightly said, "Little brother Tang, there aren't many youngsters who can be recognized as friends by young Master Long. I think your background should be very deep, right?" "Background?" A cold light flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. In the cultivation world, he had killed countless hedonistic young masters with powerful backgrounds. From the bottom of his heart, he hated these hedonistic young masters with powerful backgrounds. As the saying goes, relying on heaven, earth, and parents is not a real man. A man with unyielding bones must constantly strive for self-improvement and possess the fighting spirit to kill the blue dome of heaven. Moreover, if people respect me, I'll respect them tenfold. Tan Xiu rarely took the initiative to provoke others. But if others provoked him, he would pay them back with blood and a tooth for a tooth. He chose to ignore such a character in front of him. Big Brother Long, is there any unforeseen event regarding the professional manager? Long Zhengyu was also full of anger towards Gu Yuetao's attitude. But he was a businessman, and it was inevitable for him to deal with people from the government. Especially since his Long family's business was not small and was inextricably linked with the government. Gu Yuetao's father was the first secretary of the municipal party committee. Even though he didn't have much real power, but his special identity made many people not dare to easily offend him. Seeing that Tan Xiu directly ignored Gu Yuetao, he was also disinclined to pay attention to him. He looked at Tan Xiu and said, "There's no unforeseen event. But I have an important matter to discuss with you." After saying that, he gestured to Tan Xiu to sit down and then continued, "A few days ago, two good friends from the imperial capital came to handle some affairs and happened to meet with me. I got a piece of news from them. 3 years ago, Kang Xia, the gold medal professional manager who came back from Wall Street, the world's financial center, has resigned from the Pontiff Group in the imperial capital. If possible, I hope you can go to the imperial capital and personally invite her." Kang Xia. Tan Xiu was confused. Is this person very powerful? Very powerful. Long Zhengyu said seriously. The middle-aged man standing next to Gu Yuetao had his complexion slightly changed. He glanced at Gu Yuetao and said, "Kang Xia is more than powerful. She's a legend in the business world. She has operated a large number of financial mergers and acquisitions abroad, expanded a variety of new projects, and established a lot of marketing channels. She's a prominent figure on Wall Street. 3 years ago, she returned to the country. She was hired as the CEO by the big boss of the Pontiff Group. In just less than 3 years, she made the total assets of the Pontiff Group soar 4 times. If it weren't for that idiot second young master Pang of the Pontiff Group, the Pontiff Group would have become one of the top 50 companies in the country in the next few years." As the middle-aged man spoke up to there, a contemptuous look was revealed in his eyes as he sneered, "All the major companies in the country have broken their scalps to hire Kang Xia. Some even offered a lot of company shares, but unfortunately, all of them failed. Little brother, you're still young. I think that Kang Xia, who has eyes on the top of her head, won't even pay attention to you?" Tan Xiu was silent for a few seconds. He then looked at Long Zhengyu and said, "Give me her contact information." "All right." A strange expression appeared in Long Zhengyu's eyes. After experiencing the last gambling incident, he had an inexplicable sense of trust in Tan Xiu. In his view, others might not have the slightest chance, but Tan Xiu might really give him an unexpected surprise. After giving Kang Xia's cell number to Tan Xiu, Long Zhengyu suddenly said, "Brother Tang, about the new company you've set up, can you let me buy some shares? I'll give you 20 million yuan. You can give me the shares as you see fit." Buying shares? Tan Xiu's brows slightly furrowed. Long Zhengyu quickly said, "If you think the money is too little, I'll add more. Brother Tang, you haven't run a company before, so you may not understand a lot of things. If you want to do business, there are bound to be various issues that need to be solved. My Long family has been operating in Star City for many years. If you plan to set up a company in Star City later, I can help you solve a lot of things." Tan Xiu shot a deep look at Long Zhengyu as he nodded and said, 5% shares, no more. After Kang Xia comes, if she doesn't understand the situation here, you'll have to help her." At this moment, Tan Xiu's favorable impression toward Long Zhengyu increased. He only told Long Zhengyu that he was going to set up a cosmetics business, but he didn't mention the details. But Long Zhengyu's trust in him made him feel warm inside. Gu Yuetao looked at Long Zhengyu with a strange expression as he snappily said, "I say, young Master Long, do you have money to burn? Or are you willing to be a sucker? You only get 5% shares by injecting 20 million yuan, yet you still need to work hard to open up all kinds of relationships? Are you sick? And this kid, he said he can invite Kang Xia so he can really do it? Relying on him? Does he think he's the son or grandson of the country's top official?" Long Zhengyu's expression turned cold as he said with dissatisfaction, "Whether I'm sick or not, you'll know later." Honk, honk. At this time, a car's horn sounded. Two black Mercedes-Benz cars slowly came from a distance and stopped not far away. Two middle-aged men came down from the car. When they saw Long Zhengyu's group, they immediately smiled and walked over. "Dad, how come you're here?" Long Zhengyu greeted and asked with a curious face. Long Hanwen's eyes swept over Tan Xiao and Gu Yuetao as he said with a smile, "I have some free time today, so I and your Uncle Li came to have a drink with old Chang." Long Zhengyu quickly greeted the other middle-aged man. "Hello, Uncle Li." The middle-aged man surnamed Li said with a smile, "Little you, you're good. I heard you've done something big recently. You won miserably against the boys from the other families in Star City. Like father, like son." Long Zhengyu modestly smiled and said, "Uncle Li is overpraising me. In fact, it was all because of this brother of mine that I was able to win the bet. Dad, let me introduce him to you. He's Tan Xiao." Long Hanwen slightly squinted his eyes as he sized up Tan Xiao a few times. He then nodded and said, "As the saying goes, heroes come from the youth. Tan Xiao, you're very good. Very good indeed. If you have time later, tell little you and little Lin to take you to our house. I'll ask your aunt to cook something delicious for you." Tan Xiao nodded. "All right. Thank you, Uncle Long." Long Hanwen nodded with satisfaction. Long Zhengyu said, "Dad, Tan Xiao is preparing to set up a company. I want to invest in it." "Set up a company? Invest in it?" Long Hanwen was surprised as he sized up Tan Xiao. He had sent someone to investigate Tan Xiao's background. He was a young man from the countryside with little capital. Moreover, he was only a high school student, yet he wanted to set up a company now. Perhaps he wanted to earn some pocket money? Long Hanwen thought for a moment before he said with a smile, "If you want to invest, then do it. Tan Xiao may look young, but through my observation, he's mature and steady. He'll be a man capable of doing great things in the future." "All right, you do." "Wait a minute." Tan Xiao and Long Hanwen had a simple contact, and he had a bit of acknowledgement toward the latter. As the saying goes, the father is a hero, and the son is a hero. Long Zhengyu was very outstanding, and his father must be good as well. Long Hanwen's friend might be able to help him. Moreover, he could also accomplish his own purpose. Long Hanwen asked with a puzzled expression, "Is there something else?" Tan Xiao gently nodded. His eyes then fell on the middle-aged man surnamed Chen. He had just discovered that there was something wrong with this middle-aged man surnamed Chen's body. Now that he carefully observed him, he was even more sure of his guess. "Stretch out your wrist." The middle-aged man surnamed Chen was like a monk scratching his head. He looked at Long Hanwen and Long Zhengyu. Although he didn't know what Tan Xiao wanted to do, he still stretched out his left hand. Under the puzzled eyes of the others, Tan Xiao put his hand on the middle-aged man surnamed Chen's pulse. 10 seconds later, his finger directly pressed on the middle-aged man surnamed Chen's Tanzhong acupoint and said with a deep voice, "Breathe hard." Chapter 63. The Endless Virtue Pharmaceutical was one of the largest companies in Star City, mainly engaged in the pharmaceutical business. Its scale was one of the best in the pharmaceutical business field in the country. Chen Zhizhong was the big boss of the Endless Virtue Pharmaceutical with billions of assets and an illustrious status. He looked at Tan Xiao in front of him as a strange thought arose in his mind. This young man is checking my pulse? Is he a Chinese medicine doctor? Also, did he find out that I have internal injuries? That's impossible. Aside from my wife, there's no third person who knows about my injuries. It's absolutely impossible for him to know about it. Chen Zhizhong secretly shook his head and threw away the absurd thought in his mind. However, looking at Long Hanwen's face, he still followed Tan Xiao's request and took a deep breath. Hiss! A heart-wrenching and lung-splitting pain came from his chest. This kind of pain made Chen Zhizhong's vision turn black and he almost fainted. At the same time, he could clearly feel a burning sensation coming from his internal organs. Tan Xiao loosened his hand and said with a dignified expression, "Your internal injuries are very serious. The person who attacked you didn't have enough strength. Otherwise, your injuries wouldn't be so simple, but your internal organs would have been shattered. I'm very curious, with such a serious internal injury, Why are you still walking around? At the side, since the arrival of Long Hanwen and Chen Zhizhong, Gu Yuetao hadn't interjected. The feeling of being ignored made him feel particularly uncomfortable. In addition, he despised Tan Xiu, who was praised by the famous Long Hanwen. Jealousy surged in his chest. Seeing this opportunity, he immediately shouted, "Tan Xiu, what did you do to Boss Chen? Stop playing tricks. You're a liar." Tan Xiu sneered and said, "Whether I'm a liar or not, you don't need to worry about it." "You?" Gu Yuetao flew into a rage. Tan Xiu interrupted him and coldly snorted, "You what? I'm talking to others. What qualifications do you have to interrupt? Either you watch from the side or get the hell out of here." Gu Yuetao's face turned red. If Long Hanwen and Chen Zhizhong weren't here, he would have beaten Tan Xiu immediately. Chen Zhizhong looked at Tan Xiu in disbelief. As the pain in his chest gradually subsided, he asked incredulously, "Who are you? How do you know I have internal injuries? And you were injured by someone else?" Tan Xiu lightly said, "I've suffered injuries that are more serious than yours countless times, and my companions have also. So, I'm very clear about what it looks like after suffering an internal injury. If I'm not wrong, you must have taken some precious medicine, right? Your injuries are temporarily suppressed, but if time passes and the effects of the medicine completely dissipate, your internal injuries will become more serious because they are not treated in time. It might even endanger lives." Long Hanwen was shocked. "Brother Chen, you really have internal injuries? What happened?" Chen Zhizhong nodded with a bitter expression. He deeply looked at Tan Xiu and said with a forced smile, "Brother Long, this is not the place to chat. Let's find a quiet place to talk." Long Hanwen looked at Tan Xiu with a strange expression. He then nodded and said, "Little Tang, let's go." "All right." Tan Xiu nodded and complied. As they walked a few steps toward the management office, Chen Zhizhong suddenly stopped. He looked at Gu Yuetao and said, "You're Secretary Gu's kid, right? We have important things to discuss. You're not suitable for this occasion. Go busy yourself with something else." Gu Yuetao's face instantly turned red. Never in his dreams did he expect that Chen Zhizhong would ask him to leave. Wave after wave of regret battered his heart. He regretted jumping out to attack Tan Xiu. Otherwise, he wouldn't have failed to flatter Tan Xiu and ended up slapping the horse's leg. It's all that damn Tan Xiu's fault. Gu Yuetao put all his resentment on Tan Xiu. Big shots like Long Hanwen and Chen Zhizhong were not people he could afford to provoke. But if it weren't for Tan Xiu's appearance, he wouldn't have encountered such an embarrassing situation today. Perhaps Long Hanwen and Chen Zhizhong would have said a few words of praise or encouragement to him. At the property management office. Inside the luxuriously decorated office, Long Zhengyu was busy making tea. Chen Zhizhong and Long Hanwen warmly welcomed Tan Xiu as he sat on the high-end sofa opposite them. "Little brother Tang, since you can see my injury, you should have a way to treat it, right? To tell you the truth, my wife is a Chinese medicine doctor. Moreover, her medical skills are superb, but she's somewhat helpless when it comes to my internal injury. She can only temporarily suppress it and prevent it from erupting." Chen Zhizhong's face was full of expectation as he stared at Tan Xiu and asked. Tan Xiu said, "The treatment is very easy." "Really?" Chen Zhizhong suddenly stood up and asked with a pleasantly surprised expression. Tan Xiu nodded and said, "It's indeed very easy. I can easily prescribe a few prescriptions to treat your internal injury. However, your internal organs are injured and your blood and qi are blocked, causing your body's functions to decline. Even if you take the medicine according to my prescriptions, I'm afraid it will take a year and a half for you to recover." Chen Zhizhong was pleasantly surprised and said, "It won't be a problem if it takes a long time." His words came to an abrupt halt as his expression instantly turned sluggish. He was keenly aware that because of his injury, he had lost control of his usually calm state of mind. "I can help you cure it in a short time," Tan Xiu said confidently. Chen Zhizhong was silent for a moment before he seriously said, "What's your condition?" Tan Xiu said, "Do me a favor." Chen Zhizhong said, "Please say it. As long as I can do it, I'll never refuse." Tan Xiao calmly said, "It's actually very simple. I need you to help me tell a lie at some special time. Tell me that you've been a guest at my place in Southgate Town for 2 or 3 days. Prove that I've been at my house in Southgate Town for the past few days." Chen Zhizhong was surprised and said, "Is that it?" Tan Xiao nodded and said. Chen Zhizhong heavily nodded and said, "I promise. But, can I ask who you want to lie to?" Tan Xiao indifferently said, "The police." Chen Zhizhong's heart was shaken. A thoughtful look flashed in his eyes, but he didn't ask further. Long Hanwen quietly listened to their conversation. Seeing that they had reached an agreement, he immediately looked at Long Zhengyu and said in a deep voice, "Little Yu, go to the villa complex's monitoring room. Delete all the surveillance videos of the past few days. If anyone asks, tell them that the monitor is broken and the maintenance personnel are organizing to repair it." "All right, I'll go right away." Long Zhengyu glanced at Tan Xiao and strode out of the room. Tan Xiao's eyes followed Long Zhengyu as he left. He then nodded and thanked him. "I can't thank you enough. Uncle Long, if there's anything you need me to do in the future, just let me know." Long Hanwen nodded with satisfaction. However, a strange feeling emerged in his heart. Today was the first time he saw Tan Xiao. Although his 2 sons had praised Tan Xiao in front of him, he didn't believe it. After all, how much weight could a high school student have, even if he was very powerful? However, seeing was believing. Today, he unexpectedly saw Tan Xiao. Although Tan Xiao didn't speak much, but whether it was his words or his various performances, he didn't show the calmness and bearing that a high school student should have. He even faintly felt a kind of oppressive feeling from Tan Xiao. This kind of feeling was inexplicable, just like the reflection of the moon in the water. It made him vigilant and depressed. 18 years ago, Long Hanwen once met a person who looked ordinary, but he gave off a dangerous feeling like a dormant, ferocious beast. Later on, he inquired and learned that the person used to be a soldier. Coincidentally, that person was also surnamed Tang. After sizing up Tan Xiao a few times, Long Hanwen quietly suppressed that special feeling. He turned to look at Chen Zhizhong and said, "Brother Chen, little Tang just said that you were injured by someone. What's going on? Who dares to fight with you?" Chen Zhizhong looked at Tan Xiao and then said with a wry smile, "Brother Long, you only know that I'm a businessman, but you don't know my other identity. A martial artist. I'm a martial artist with an ancient martial art heritage. Very few ordinary people can come in contact with our circle." Tan Xiao suddenly said, "Your cultivation is very low. Although you're a bit stronger than me, but it's very easy for a real martial arts expert to bully you." Chen Zhizhong was shocked. "You're also a cultivator?" Tan Xiao was in contact with the martial artists of today's society for the first time. He intended to understand the situation of martial artists in today's society from Chen Zhizhong's mouth, so he didn't conceal anything. "I'm indeed a cultivator, but my cultivation is different from yours. To be honest, I don't know much about the current cultivator community. Can you talk about it?" Chen Zhizhong said, "Actually, I don't know much about it. Some martial arts heritage are passed down by families, and some are passed down by sections. I know a few martial arts heritage martial artists, and some of them have reached the grandmaster level. Their bodies are as light as a swallow, and it's not a problem for them to hit a bull across a mountain." A disappointed feeling emerged in Tan Xiao's heart. What he needed to know was not about the martial arts circle, but the cultivation circle. The martial arts grandmaster that Chen Zhizhong spoke of was tantamount to a child playing house for cultivators. A cultivator with a bit of strength could easily obliterate a so-called martial arts grandmaster. Subsequently, from Chen Zhizhong's mouth, Tan Xiao and Long Hanwen learned that the one who injured him was a martial arts expert. The reason was that Chen Zhizhong and the other party fancied a precious medicinal herb in the Star City Medicinal Herbs Market. As a result, Chen Zhizhong finally obtained that precious medicinal herb after a financial struggle. But the other party, seeing that he couldn't compete with Chen Zhizhong in terms of financial resources, secretly robbed him. In the end, although Chen Zhizhong was able to kill the other party, he was also seriously injured. "Well, I have other things to do later. I'll treat your injury now. Uncle Long, I'll have to trouble you to help guard here and don't let anyone disturb us." Long Hanwen said, saving a person is like fighting a fire. It's best to treat him now. You can rest assured that I'll immediately arrange some people to guard the door. I won't let anyone disturb you. Tan Xiu nodded with satisfaction. He then ordered Chen Zhizhong to take off his clothes, leaving only his underpants. He ignored the awkward expression on Chen Zhizhong's face as he fiercely punched his abdomen. Puff. Chapter 64. Chen Zhizhong's pupils shrunk and his eyes widened. The sharp pain made him blacked out and he almost fainted on the ground. He was confused and didn't understand. Tan Xiu said that he wanted to help heal him, but why did he attack him? Moreover, his strength was so strong that he almost fainted. Endure it even if it's painful. Tan Xiu moved his feet and instantly stood behind Chen Zhizhong. His fists heavily punched several times, all hitting Chen Zhizhong's back. Immediately after, he spread his 5 fingers. His thumb pressed on the Shuntang acupoint, his middle finger on the Jianshu acupoint, and his little finger on the Jiang acupoint. Open for me. His fingers twisted and his other fist once again hit Chen Zhizhong's back. As Chen Zhizhong screamed halfway, he spurted out a mouthful of black blood. Tan Xiu paused for a few seconds and then circled to Chen Zhizhong's front. His thumb accurately pressed on the Tanzhong acupoint on Chen Zhizhong's chest. After 3 presses, his palm turned into a fist and his strength was reduced by 30%, hitting Chen Zhizhong's chest again. Cough, cough. Blood spurted out from his mouth, but the blood he spurted this time was much redder than before. Fall down. Tan Xiu used his toes to pick Chen Zhizhong's heel. As his legs were lifted up, his body heavily fell backward. However, Tan Xiu's eyes and hands were quick. He instantly grabbed one of his arms. Due to his absolute strength, Chen Zhizhong didn't suffer any injuries and then lay flat on the ground. Qilin bone. White tiger vein. Flying ape arm, Tan Xiu's hands constantly searched Chen Zhizhong's body. His face gradually revealed a surprised look as he said again, "It's a pity to have a cultivation body. Without a peerless cultivation technique and a powerhouse to guide you, you've now fallen to the level of an ant. What a pity." With that said, he suddenly raised his hands and then slapped Chen Zhizhong's chest. His slaps were very rhythmic, sometimes as clear as a bird's cry, and sometimes as dull as a drum. Gradually, blood-red lines appeared on Chen Zhizhong's chest that was slapped red. These lines undulated like flowing water. At the side, Long Hanwen was tongue-tied as he looked at the scene in front of him. If it weren't for his sanity, perhaps he would have thought that he was dreaming. Chen Zhizhong was almost beaten up by Tan Xiu. What kind of treatment was this? Chen Zhizhong was already seriously injured. If he continued to fight like this, would he be beaten to death? He wanted to stop her, but when he thought of Tan Xiu's words, he could only bury his worry deep in his heart. Time ticked by. 10 minutes later, Cheng Xueme appeared outside the door. At this moment, Tang Xueme's complexion was ice-cold. She looked at the 4 tall and straight security guards in front of her and spoke in a deep voice. "I'm Cheng Xueme from the City Criminal Police Unit. Due to the needs of the case, I want to find Tan Xiu to understand the situation. As far as I know, Tan Xiu should be in this house. Please move aside. Sorry, we received orders from the boss that no one is allowed to enter." Cheng Xueme angrily said, "It's every citizen's duty to cooperate with the police to investigate the case. I don't care who your boss is, but please move aside. Otherwise, you will be obstructing the police from handling the case and will be punished by the law." "I'm sorry." The ice-cold voice was the response to her. "What's going on?" Long Zhengyu arrived in time. He looked at Cheng Xueme and the other 2 criminal police unit members before he turned to look at the security guards and asked. Cheng Xueme said, "Are you Long Zhengyu? Do you know me?" Long Zhengyu was surprised. Cheng Xueme lightly said, "You're a famous star entrepreneur in Star City, the successor of the new generation of business. You've appeared in many financial magazines. How could I not know you? I'm Cheng Xueme from the City Criminal Police Unit. I'm looking for Tan Xiu to understand something. I'll have to trouble you to ask them to move aside." Long Zhengyu forced a smile and said, "Captain Cheng, is it? I'm really sorry, but Tan Xiao is currently inconvenient to meet guests. If it's possible, I hope you can wait for a moment. I'll go inside and inform him. What? Cheng Xueme was stunned. Never in her dreams did she think that she would need someone to inform Tan Xiao if she wanted to see him. And this person turned out to be the famous Long family's young master in Star City. Could it be? Was there really a loophole in the previous investigation on Tan Xiao? Could it be that his identity was more powerful than Long Zhengyu's? He even let Long Zhengyu stand guard at his door? Long Zhengyu pushed the door and entered. But a moment later he turned around and walked out. What happened? Cheng Xueme frowned and asked. Long Zhengyu said, "It's really inconvenient for Tan Xiao to meet guests now. Please wait for a moment." Inside the room, after the last slap, Tan Xiao's finger pressed on Chen Zhizhong's Tianshu acupoint. After waiting for a few seconds, he loosened his finger and heaved a deep sigh of relief. "How do you feel?" Tan Xiao looked at Chen Zhizhong, whose body was twitching but had not fainted. Chen Zhizhong opened his mouth, but his voice seemed to be blocked in his throat. His body twitched even more violently. His skin looked as though it had just been boiled as it turned red. Soon, traces of grayish-black impurities were discharged from every pore of his body at a speed visible to the naked eye. He struggled to sit up and immediately sat cross-legged, slowly closing his eyes. Half an hour later, Chen Zhizhong opened his eyes as a glint flashed in his eyes. His body gently jumped up and directly jumped up. It was as though the shackles on his body had been removed, making him feel very comfortable. "My injuries." After a dazed expression, he was immediately overjoyed. He found that not only had his internal injuries healed, but he had also broken through the third stage of his cultivation technique that he had been unable to break through. The boiling blood and qi all over his body gave him a comfortable feeling, making him feel as though he had suddenly become 10 years younger. "Thank you, Mr. Tang." Chen Zhizhong calmed himself down and cupped his fists with a bit of respect in his eyes. Tan Xiao waved his hand and said, "Go take a bath. I think you'll have to help me later." Chen Zhizhong stared blankly for a moment before he nodded and walked outside. Just as Chen Zhizhong walked out of the door, a bit of confusion could be seen in Cheng Xueme's eyes. She faintly felt that this stinky and dirty man in front of her was somewhat familiar. "Little you, let them come in." Long Hanwen's voice came from the room. Cheng Xueme glanced at Long Zhengyu and strode into the room. Her gaze swept over Long Hanwen, and she immediately recognized his identity. She also understood why Long Zhengyu was guarding the door outside. Finally, Cheng Xueme's eyes fell on Tan Xiao. Seeing Tan Xiao leisurely sitting on the sofa and drinking tea, she walked a few steps forward and said with a deep voice, "Tan Xiao, we meet again." "Captain Cheng, is it?" Tan Xiao said. "Why are you looking for me? Haven't you already investigated the previous case? I was trying to save someone, so I accidentally killed the fugitive who broke into the school." "Tan Xiao, don't play dumb with me." Cheng Xueme coldly snorted and said, "You're the one who committed the murder in the abandoned auto repair shop on Deep Red Cloud Street in peaceful Serene District, right?" Tan Xiao pretended to be confused and said, "Captain Cheng, to catch an adulterer, you must catch both. What does a murder case in a small area have to do with me? You're a cop. You should know the consequences of slander." Cheng Xueme was flustered. Tan Xiao's accusation made her somewhat at a loss. However, she was, after all, an elite of the criminal police unit, so she quickly adjusted her mentality. After organizing the words in her mind, she said with a sinking tone, "Tan Xiao, I made a slip of the tongue. I hope you don't mind. I just want to ask, why did you suddenly disappear in the past few days? Where were you a few hours ago?" Tan Xiao said indifferently, "I have something to do these days, so I've been at home in Southgate Town. A few hours ago, I was at home." "How can you prove it?" "Someone can help me prove it because I've been with him." "Chen Zhizhong." Cheng Xueme frowned. She felt that the name was somewhat familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had heard it. She opened her mouth and was about to speak again, but the face of the man who just left the room suddenly appeared in her mind. That man was the Endless Virtue Pharmaceuticals' big boss, Chen Zhizhong. 10 minutes later, Chen Zhizhong took a shower and returned to his room with a clean set of clothes he got from God knows where. Boss Chen, can you prove that Tan Xiao was with you in the past 3 or 4 hours? Cheng Xueme asked. Chen Zhizhong said with a smile, yeah, Tang Bingyao was indeed with me. Speaking of which, he's really amazing. I have a problem with my body, and he can help me treat it. Recently, I've been coming to Southgate Town almost every day to let Tang Bingyao treat me. This, Cheng Xueme found that her guess was completely wrong. Tan Xiao had a witness to prove that he was in Southgate Town a few hours ago, and not at the scene of the abandoned auto repair shop on Deep Red Cloud Road in the peaceful Serene district. This meant that he didn't have the time to commit the crime. Tan Xiao, Boss Chen, thank you for your cooperation. We still have something to do, so we won't bother you anymore. Tan Xiao's expression was calm as he watched Cheng Xueme and the other two leave. Then, he picked up the teacup again and gently took a sip. This incident made him think clearly about one thing. If he were to do something later, especially when dealing with the police, he must think of a way out in advance. Chen Zhizhong and Long Hanwen didn't ask what Tan Xiao did, but they had made up their mind to send someone to investigate it later. Plop. The moment the door was closed, Chen Zhizhong knelt in front of Tan Xiao. Brother Chen, what are you doing? Long Hanwen looked at Chen Zhizhong with a dumbfounded expression as he involuntarily exclaimed. Chen Zhizhong didn't pay attention to Long Hanwen. With a fanatical look in his eyes, he respectfully said, Mr. Tang, I've never heard of your martial arts realm. You've cured my internal injuries, so you can be considered as my savior. So, please accept me as your disciple, benefactor. What? Long Hanwen was stunned as he looked at Chen Zhizhong with an incredulous expression. It was as if the person in front of him was not his old friend of decades, but a stranger. What kind of joke was this? He was the dignified Endless Virtue Pharmaceuticals big boss, a billionaire with assets of billions of yuan, yet he wanted to worship a high school student as his master? Was he, Chen Zhizhong, crazy? Or had the world gone crazy? Chapter 65. Tan Xiao's expression turned cold as he looked at Chen Zhizhong, who was kneeling in front of him. In his opinion, even if Chen Zhizhong worshipped him as his master, he wouldn't be able to achieve much in this lifetime. At most, he would barely be able to ascend and become an immortal. How many powerful immortals in the immortal world were willing to break their heads just to worship him as their master? But in the end, he had only casually accepted a few talented registered disciples. I won't. Tan Xiao coldly refused. He then stood up and looked at Long Hanwen, saying, Uncle Long, I still have other things to do, so I'll go back first. Long Hanwen looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression. He then looked at Chen Zhizhong, who was kneeling on the floor. The corner of his mouth fiercely twitched a few times as he forced a smile and said, All right. You can go ahead if you have something to do. Remember to come to our house with little Yu and little Lin to have a meal later. Tan Xiao nodded. He then greeted Long Zhengyu and directly left. Dad, I'm going to see off Tan Xiao. Long Zhengyu, who was shocked to the point that it was hard for him to recover, hurriedly said. In the room, only Long Hanwen and Chen Zhizhong were left. With an ashen face, Chen Zhizhong slowly stood up. With a disappointed expression, he silently sat back on the sofa. Long Hanwen forced a smile and said, Brother Chen, why are you doing this? Even if Tan Xiao is very powerful, he shouldn't make you kneel and worship him as your master, right? Chen Zhizhong shook his head and said with a bitter expression, Brother Long, you don't understand. My biggest hobby in life is practicing martial arts. When I was young, I was famous for being obsessed with martial arts. Later, because my family was poor, I started my own business. But my love for martial arts didn't reduce at all. Instead, the older I got, the more obsessed I became. Mr. Tang is really powerful, to the point that I admire him. Long Hanwen curiously said, Didn't Tan Xiao say before? His strength is not as good as yours. Long Hanwen curiously asked. Chen Zhizhong shook his head and said, You're wrong. His strength is definitely above me. Do you remember the scene when he treated me? His moves were extremely fast, and his power control was extremely precise. Can you guess what the most important thing is? What is it? Long Hanwen was confused. Chen Zhizhong replied in a deep voice, I'm cultivating an internal cultivation technique passed down in my family, and I've already broken through to the second stage more than a decade ago. But no matter how hard I tried, I was never able to break through to the third level. Not only did Mr. Tang heal my internal injuries and save my life, but he also gave me great benefits when he was treating me. Just now, after I was cured, I discovered that I had already broken through to the third realm. Hiss, Long Hanwen was shocked. Chen Zhizhong had been stuck in the second realm for more than 10 years and had not broken through, but because of Tan Xiu's help, he had broken through just like that? Chen Zhizhong spoke again. Brother Long, you don't know what it means to break through from the second stage to the third stage of my cultivation technique. Let's put it this way. My current strength is several times stronger than before Mr. Tang treated me. As he spoke, he slowly squatted down and punched the ground. Boom! Broken tiles flew in all directions, and an inch-deep pit appeared on the flat and solid ground. Chen Zhizhong's fist, however, didn't have the slightest injury. Long Hanwen suddenly jumped up from the sofa as if he had seen an alien. He exclaimed in shock, How is this possible? Your strength? Chen Zhizhong said with a solemn expression. For example, if my previous punching strength was 100 pounds, then my current punching strength is at least 300 pounds. My strength will also advance by leaps and bounds along with my future cultivation. Brother Long, now you understand how big of a fortune Mr. Tang has given me, right? Long Hanwen nodded with a dumbfounded expression. After a long while, he realized that he had received too many shocks today. Inside the villa in Southgate Town. After returning home, Tan Xiu went straight to the bedroom on the second floor. Standing on the balcony of the bedroom, Tan Xiu looked at the picturesque scenery of the villa complex. He then took out his mobile and opened the phone book with the name Kong Xia. His thumb stroked the dialing button, but he didn't press it. A thoughtful expression flashed in his eyes as he pondered about how to gain the trust of this legendary figure in the business world, and how to make her work for him. As for Kong Xia's information, Long Zhengyu had also given him her contact information. Therefore, he had a general understanding of Kong Xia's situation. Indifferent and stubborn. She has a deep adventurous spirit and likes to take the unconventional path. She has an accurate grasp of timing, and once the timing is right, she will act decisively. Tan Xiu recalled the information about Kong Xia in his mind as a smile gradually appeared on his face. Immediately after, his thumb pressed the dialing button. A few seconds after the ringtone sounded, the call was connected. Kong Xia speaking, who's this? Tan Xiu looked at the beautiful scenery outside and said, I'm Tan Xiu. You may not have heard of me, but I'm a straightforward person. The reason why I'm looking for you is very simple. I'm ready to give you a path to strive for in the future. Are you interested? At the other end of the phone, Kong Xia was silent for more than 10 seconds before she slowly said, To be honest, you used the simplest words to arouse my curiosity. Tell me, what path can you give me? Before I tell you, you need to answer a question of mine, said Tan Xiu. If there are two kinds of cosmetics, one of which has a strong whitening and moisturizing effect that can enhance a woman's skin, even those high-end whitening products in society can't compare to 1/10 of its effect. What do you think will happen once this kind of cosmetics enters the market and accepts the test of the mass market? The second one can repair scars and also has the effect of removing acne and freckles. Listen carefully, it's the real effect, which can also be called the curative effect. Once this kind of product enters the market and accepts the test of the mass market, what do you think will happen? Imperial City, in a high-end resort. Kong Xia, who had a devilish figure and an angelic face, was wearing a sexy bikini. She was sitting alone on a recliner in a large swimming pool. She was wiping her wet long hair while holding a mobile phone in one hand. Her expression was slightly solemn. It was completely different from her indifferent appearance when she wanted to hang up the phone. It seemed to be two questions, but it was actually the same question. She wanted to say that if these two kinds of cosmetics really had the same effect as the other party said, once they entered the market and accepted the test of the mass market, it would definitely cause a huge sensation in today's society. Even the business would be so good that it would explode. Would these two kinds of cosmetics really exist in this world? Kang Xia didn't know, but she was a woman with keen insight towards opportunities. This time, she was silent for a long time. After 2 minutes, she slowly said, "Caller ID, your number is from Star City. I'll give you 2 days to send the samples of these two cosmetics to me. We'll talk again after I've tested the effect. I think if you can get my phone number, you should be able to get my address too." Tan Xiao said indifferently, "I don't like being told what to do. If it's someone I want to use, I won't be bossy and bossy once I give them the power. I want to do business, but I don't have much time to pay attention to business. I think with your IQ, you should be able to understand what I mean. Alright, that's it. I'll wait for you in Star City. Contact me when you arrive." After saying that, Tan Xiao directly hung up the phone. Inside the Imperial City Resort swimming complex, Kang Xia stared blankly at the busy tone coming from her mobile. She couldn't believe that the other party had hung up the phone. Who was she? She was Kang Xia. Countless people fawned and flattered her. They couldn't wait to pursue her, and couldn't wait to use her as a business elite. In the past, she was always the one who took the initiative to hang up other people's phone. How come the tables had turned and it was someone else who hung up her phone? Was that person's brain not working well? Or did her charm value plummet? It seemed like, did he beg her? Kang Xia was somewhat angry out of shame. She casually threw her mobile on the coffee table next to the recliner. Her mind couldn't help but recall that person's words. Very arrogant. Very arrogant. Kang Xia evaluated the other party twice and silently pondered over the issue. She didn't know whether this was an opportunity or not. If it was, she believed that once she grabbed it, she would definitely shock everyone. But if not, she was afraid that she would be fooled. Tan Xiao? Star City's Tan Xiao? Kang Xia grabbed her mobile again. After dialing a cell number, she spoke with a deep tone. "Andy, help me investigate a person. I only have 5 clues. His name, he's in Star City, he's a man, he's very arrogant, and his mobile number. How long do you need to give me the answer?" "A day." A charming voice came from the phone. Kang Xia said, "Half a day." Southgate Town. Tan Xiao hung up the phone and called Han Qingwu and Yuan Chuling respectively. Yuan Chuling was fine since his mother had been saved. He only asked if the person who saved his mother was Tan Xiao, but Tan Xiao just brushed him off. As for Han Qingwu, Tan Xiao found it a bit troublesome to deal with her. In fact, he felt somewhat helpless inside, as well as an inexplicable feeling. After all, Han Qingwu was very similar to the woman he met in the immortal world. He had an indescribable feeling toward her. On the phone, he apologized and promised that he would go to school the next day. After being severely criticized, he was temporarily forgiven. After dealing with all the matters, Tan Xiao recalled Chen Zhizhong's experience. He found a precious medicinal herb in the medicinal herbs market. Since it's still early today, how about I go to the medicinal herbs market? Tan Xiao was a resolute person. The moment this thought emerged, he immediately made a decision. He took out the hundreds of thousands of cash he got from the Slayer today, put it back into his bag, and immediately started. Although he had promised to give the one-eyed woman's grandmother a sum of money, now was not the time. He was short of money at the moment, so he had to use it now. Grumble, grumble. Suddenly, Tan Xiao froze. A grumbling sound came from his stomach, as if reminding him that he hadn't eaten breakfast and lunch today. Chapter 66. Tan Xiao liked the feeling of hunger. It made him feel like he had the smell of fireworks. He remembered when he was in the immortal world, he didn't need to eat at all. Usually, if he wanted to eat something, he would taste the rare and precious fruits. 7 emotions and 6 desires. 5 grains and miscellaneous grains. The smell of life in the secular world made him somewhat intoxicated. The most perfect thing was because he now had his mother. 10,000 years of regret was made up today, and he especially cherished it. After a moment, Tan Xiao left the villa and strolled on the tree-lined trail with birdsong and fragrant flowers. He enjoyed the tranquil atmosphere in the surroundings, and his mood was tranquil. Southgate Town was indeed worthy of being one of the most luxurious villas in Star City. Every security guard he met would stop and salute him to show their respect. Money makes the world go round. Tan Xiao quietly savored this sentence. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it made sense. Today's society was very different from the immortal world. In the immortal world, the strong were respected, but in this society, wealth and power were respected. "Hello, Mr. Tang." The tall and good-looking property manager, Long Shuiyao, happened to pass by and greeted Tan Xiao with a smiling face. Tan Xiao nodded with a smile. After walking a few steps, he suddenly remembered the sanitation issue of the house. He immediately stopped Long Shuiyao and asked, "Manager Long, I have something to ask you." Long Shuiyao said with a smile, "Please say it, Mr. Tang." Tan Xiao helplessly said, "Manager Long, does the property management office in Southgate Town have a sanitation service? I want to hire someone to clean it regularly." Long Shuiyao said, "Our community does have a sanitation service, but you need to pay an additional fee. I suggest Mr. Tang to hire a few maids. After all, there will be a lot of precious items in your house. Although the property management office's cleaning staff will do their job, accidents are inevitable." Tan Xiao said, "Hiring maids will have to wait for a while. So be it. You send someone to help me clean it first. I'll give you the fee now." After saying that, Tan Xiao took out a stack of 100 yuan bills from his bag and directly handed it to Long Shuiyao. Long Shuiyao strangely looked at Tan Xiao. She did not expect that Tan Xiao would actually carry so much cash with him. This stack of 100 yuan bills, she estimated that it should be 10,000 yuan. Moreover, when Tan Xiao was withdrawing money from the bag, her sharp eyes caught that there were many stacks of 100 yuan bills in it. "Weirdo!" Long Shuiyao secretly muttered in her heart. In this day and age, no matter how rich one was, very few people carried so much cash with them. With the development of the times, the credit card business had become more and more popular, and it had been popularized by the people of the country. "Mr. Tang, you don't need to give me money now. When you pay the property fees every month, our management office will calculate it and report the total amount and details to you." Tan Xiao thought about it and nodded. "All right then. You let the cleaning staff clean once every 2 or 3 days. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first." "Take care, Mr. Tang." Long Shuiyao calmly looked at Tan Xiao's back as a thoughtful expression flashed in her eyes. She was very curious about Tan Xiao, because the most expensive King View villa in Southgate Town was reserved by her cousin, Long Zhengyu. Even the interior decoration was specially designed by her cousin, and all the materials used were the best. But why did her cousin give that villa to this young man? Southgate Town. Because it occupied a large area, it took Tan Xiao a lot of time to go out. Near Southgate Town, there was a bustling commercial street with rows and rows of shops with a dazzling lineup of goods. Each of the shops belonged to the high-end level. Just as Tan Xiao stepped into this commercial street, he smelled the fragrance of food floating in the air. He walked forward and scanned the area with his eyes. Soon, he saw the restaurant that was decorated in an antique style. The plaque was engraved with 3 big characters, "Drunken Immortal Abode," which looked vigorous and powerful. After entering the door, Tan Xiao sat down in front of the table and chair by the window. After the waiter brought him the menu, he casually ordered 2 dishes and a main course, and then quietly waited. Humph! Tan Xiao's eyes, through the glass window, keenly caught a few youths who were sneaking around at the far end of the street. After leaving Southgate Town, he was aware that a pair of eyes were staring at him. That feeling was very strong. However, in order not to beat the grass and alert the snake, and in order to determine the identity of the other party, he didn't look around. Instead, he came here and used the corner of his eyes to observe. He was a bit worried. He was worried that some of the murderers he killed had slipped through the net. He was not afraid of retaliation, but it was easy to dodge a spear in the open, but it was hard to guard against a stab in the dark. He was afraid that those remnants would retaliate against his mother, just like how they retaliated against Yuan Chuling by kidnapping his mother. At the end of the street, Scarface Li was leaning against the corner, smoking a cigarette as he observed Tan Xiao in the drunken immortal abode. He had arrived at Southgate Town half an hour ago, and the reason was that he had been paid to eliminate disasters. He didn't know how many times he had done this kind of thing. Big brother, why didn't we act just now? Looking at that brat's appearance, I can knock him over by myself. A youth with dyed blonde hair asked with a puzzled expression. Yeah. When that brat left Southgate Town, we had the chance to clean him up. Why didn't we act? Another robust youth asked. Scarface Lee sneered and said, "You two are too impatient. In our line of work, it's better to be safe than sorry. When young Master Gu contacted me today, he told me that this brat's identity is a bit unusual. We can't fail miserably in an easy task." The blonde said without taking it seriously, "Big brother, young Master Gu just told us to break his legs. Let's just swarm up and directly cripple him, and then leave immediately. Star City is so big, I'm afraid that he won't even know who hit him after he's been beaten." "Shut up." Scarface Lee fiercely slapped the blonde's face and said with a gloomy expression, "Remember this. Carelessness will only make us miserable. You've been following me in this line of work for a few years, and I think you all know that standing on the riverbank will make your shoes wet. I don't want your brothers to be implicated because of your carelessness. Big Tiger, ask Xiao Chong where they are." Upon seeing Scarface Lee's anger, the robust youth suddenly jumped up in fright and quickly contacted according to Scarface Lee's instructions. Quickly, he hung up the phone and said, "Big brother, Xiao Chong and the others will arrive soon." Scarface Lee nodded and said, "We'll wait for Xiao Chong and the others to arrive, then we'll find the right time to act." With more than a dozen people suddenly attacking that brat, even if he has 3 heads and 6 arms, he won't be able to escape the fate of having his legs broken. Sit. The robust youth nodded again and again. On the roof of a nearby 3-story building, Gu Yuetao was holding a pair of binoculars as he stood on the edge of the building. Next to him was a middle-aged man with glasses and a briefcase. "Young Master Gu, we haven't clearly investigated the other party's background, yet we rashly sent people to act. Isn't it too hasty? I always feel that he can live in Southgate Town not only because of his relationship with Long Zhengyu, but perhaps there's something special about him." The middle-aged man hesitated. Gu Yuetao sneered and said, "He gang, how come we haven't clearly investigated that brat's background? It's just that his gambling skills are good, and the house was given to him by Long Zhengyu. Also, his family background is that he's a country bumpkin from the countryside. Moreover, he's a high school student from Xingqing City No. 1 High School. Besides, Scarface Lee is a man who knows the rules. Even if he fails, he won't sell me out." The gang was silent for a moment before he finally nodded silently. He also felt that he was being overly cautious. He was very clear about Gu Yuetao's identity and background. Not only was Gu Yuetao's father the city's first secretary, but his mother also managed a company with hundreds of millions of assets. And he was Gu Yuetao's mother's secretary. Inside the Drunken Immortal House restaurant, Tan Xiu was sitting alone by the window, quietly tasting the dishes of the Drunken Immortal House. For him, the taste of the dishes was very ordinary. It was simply incomparable to the delicacies he had eaten in the immortal world, and the bejeweled nectar he drank. Not to mention that he was once a grandmaster chef, and his culinary skills had reached the pinnacle. Ring, ring, ring. His cell phone's ringtone suddenly sounded. Tan Xiu took out his cell phone and looked at the caller ID. He pressed the answer button and lightly said, "Tan Xiu speaking, who's this?" "Grandmaster Tang, I'm Jia Ruidao's eldest apprentice, Gong Dalong. Can you spare some time for us to meet? I've arrived at Star City." Tan Xiu angrily said, "I told you I don't have time." After saying that, he directly hung up the phone. For Tan Xiu, he didn't like professional gamblers like Jia Ruidao. To be honest, Jia Ruidao's gambling skills were indeed very powerful. However, there would always be someone better than him in the world, and there would always be someone higher than him. If one day Jia Ruidao were to encounter someone more powerful than him, then perhaps his fate would be very miserable. Furthermore, once a gambler's eyes turned red from losing, it would definitely be a terrible thing. They would lose their reason and recklessly lose everything. In a light case, they would lose their family's wealth, and in a heavy case, their lives would be in danger. Gamblers are just a bunch of people who are like snakes trying to swallow an elephant. Greed is the original sin. Tan Xiao couldn't help but curse inwardly. The food he was eating became even more tasteless. Ring, ring, ring. That phone number just now was calling back persistently. A chilling light flashed in Tan Xiao's eyes. He was silent for a few seconds before he put down the chopsticks in his hand. He pressed the answer button again and spoke with a sinking tone. I told you that I'm disgusted with gambling. Furthermore, my friendship with Jia Ruidao has yet to reach the point where I can stand up for him from 1,000 miles away. I'm warning you, if you dare to harass me again, you'll have to bear the consequences. Grandmaster Tang, I understand what you mean. But can you listen to what I have to say? My master is old and has long intended to retire from the gambling circle. This incident is completely caused by my junior brother. My junior brother is master's son, so master has no choice but to act. Furthermore, I know that your friendship with master has yet to reach the point where he needs your help. But I still want to ask you to help him. If Grandmaster Tang is willing to help, I'll give all my assets to you. It's not a lot, only tens of millions of yuan. Also, if you help my master this time, we, master and disciple, will owe you a huge favor. If Grandmaster Tang has any errands for us, we, master and disciple, will be the first to rush over even if we are at the ends of the earth. Chapter 67. As Tan Xiao quietly listened to Gong Dalong's words, the chill in his eyes gradually dissipated. He could feel Gong Dalong's sincerity from his tone, as well as his concern for his master, Jia Ruidao. Money. He didn't care much about it. Money was just an auxiliary resource for his cultivation. Not to mention tens of millions of assets, even if it was more, it was not impossible for him to earn it. Filial piety. What he cared about was Gong Dalong's filial piety. As the saying goes, filial piety is the most important of all virtues. Being kind and filial piety was the bottom line of a person, the cornerstone of morality. Gong Dalong's character was something that Tan Xiao really valued. A gentleman's words were hard to retract, and he valued Gong Dalong's promise. Where are you? Star City Airport. Tan Xiao said, I'll go to Star City Medicinal Herbs Market later. Call me when you arrive. The call ended. Tan Xiao received a call from Long Jinglin. Long Jinglin's tone was very excited. Apparently, he knew what Tan Xiao had done today. After inquiring that Tan Xiao was having a meal at Drunken Immortal Tavern, he hurriedly hung up the phone and rushed over to meet with Tan Xiao. Soon, Tan Xiao had a simple meal, paid the bill and left Drunken Immortal Tavern. He originally wanted to stop a taxi after the meal and directly take a taxi to Star City Medicinal Herbs Market. But those people who were monitoring him made him feel like a fishbone stuck in his throat. If he didn't solve this trouble, he would never feel at ease. Tan Xiao casually identified the direction and walked toward the distance. At the same time, he used his divine sense to observe those people who were following him. When he entered Drunken Immortal Tavern to eat, he observed that there were only 3 people following him, but now the numbers suddenly increased to 14. However, what made him feel a little relieved was that those people following him had weak footsteps and sloppy walking, completely like street thugs. If they were the same kind of people as the ones he had killed, he would have to be extremely vigilant. But if they were street thugs, he could easily solve them. 10 minutes later, Tan Xiao turned into a remote road. There were few people here. Compared to the bustling commercial street, this place was less noisy and more quiet. Behind him, Scarface Lee was overjoyed. He didn't expect that after finishing his meal, Tan Xiao didn't return to Southgate Town, but came here. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. Chase after him. Following Scarface Lee's order, more than a dozen young men scattered around him rushed toward Tan Xiao. In order to prevent Tan Xiao from escaping, some of them even took a detour to another path, preparing to block Tan Xiao's escape route. Who are you people? Tan Xiao was surrounded, but his expression was as cold as ice. Scarface Lee narrowed his eyes. He didn't immediately order his men to attack. Instead, he sized up Tan Xiao. At this moment, he also had some misgivings in his heart. In the past, when he ganged up on others and beat them up, they would always reveal nervous and fearful expressions. However, the young boy before him was not afraid at all and was unusually calm. It seems that this little guy is indeed not simple. No wonder he can become Gu Yuetao's enemy. Scarface Li turned his head and looked at the gang of brothers around him. He then said with a sinking tone, "When you attack, if he doesn't resist, you only need to break his legs." Good. A group of young thugs revealed a hideous grin as they rushed toward Tan Xiao. Tan Xiao's eyes were like torches, and his moves were as fast as lightning. The first two young thugs who rushed in front of him were sent flying upside down by his straight fists. The moment he turned around and kicked, another young thug was also sent flying. Even that young thug's body smashed several of his companions behind him to the ground. Bang! Bang! In just half a minute, Tang Xiao had beaten down the 13 young bullies who participated in the fight. For Tan Xiao, these young thugs were simply embroidered pillows. However, he didn't directly kill them after he determined that they weren't from the same gang as those thugs. He wasn't afraid of killing people, but he didn't want to add unnecessary trouble to himself. Moreover, he had already faintly guessed who hired these thugs to deal with him. However, the conclusion still needed to be proven. Scarface Li's stiff body froze on the spot. After more than 10 seconds, he raised his arm with difficulty and rubbed his eyes to make sure that he wasn't hallucinating. 13 brothers. 13 brothers were so easily beaten down? Although they hadn't gone through any special training and didn't have any foundation in martial arts, they had fought countless times with him. Their fighting experience was very rich. How could this be? How could this bastard named Tan Xiao be so powerful? Scarface Li subconsciously retreated 2 steps. His eyes were filled with fear as he stared at Tan Xiao. He had practiced martial arts. He could fight 3 or 4 people at once, but it would take some effort. If he were to fight 13 people at once, perhaps he would be beaten down in minutes. An expert. This Tan Xiao was definitely an expert among experts. He had never come across such a strong expert. On the roof of a nearby 3-story building, Gu Yuetao and he gang adjusted their position so that they could clearly see the distant path. They held binoculars and stood at the edge of the building. They were dumbfounded as they looked at the 13 youths who were beaten down by Tan Xiao. Is he possessed by the god of war? How could someone be so powerful? A single person can actually beat 13 thugs who often fight, rely on others' protection fees, and take care of people's business so miserably? Gu Yuetao involuntarily exclaimed. He gang's mouth fiercely twitched a few times. He secretly suppressed the fear in his heart and bitterly said, "Even if he's not possessed by the god of war, I'm afraid he's not far from it. It's too terrifying. He alone can beat down 13 people. Is he still a human?" Gu Yuetao's complexion was faintly pale. He had previously sent someone to investigate Tan Xiao's information. The result of the investigation was that Tan Xiao came from an ordinary family. He had a car accident and had turned from a learning genius into an idiot. Although he seemed to be showing signs of recovery recently, it was nothing to worry about. In addition, Tan Xiao seemed to have no other ability apart from his gambling skill, which made Long Zhenyu treat him favorably. But how could the situation be reversed like this? "Young Master Gu, what should we do now?" He gang suppressed the fear in his heart and asked in a low voice. Gu Yuetao's complexion alternated between green and white. After 10 seconds, he gnashed his teeth and said fiercely, "Even if he can fight, so what? He could beat up 13 hooligans, but could he beat down 13 martial arts masters? What if there are dozens of martial arts experts?" He gang was surprised. "Young Master Gu, you want to find?" Gu Yuetao sneered. "That's right. Those people of the Golden Rock Security Company are usually very idle. I'm afraid Vice President Liu wants to earn some extra money." He gang hesitated. "Young Master Gu, I'm afraid it will cost a lot to invite the people of the Golden Rock Security Company. In case this matter is known by the general manager." Gu Yuetao said with a deep voice, "I don't need the company's money. I'll pay it myself." His words were sonorous and forceful, but his heart was bleeding. How could he not know how much it would cost to invite the people of the Golden Rock Security Company? But in order to wash away his shame and make Tan Xiao pay the price, He had secretly decided to sell his expensive Porsche sports car. On a remote path, Tan Xiao coldly looked at Scarface Lee. With a flip of his wrist, he silently took out a Mitsubishi Army knife. This Mitsubishi Army knife was the one he took last time to deal with those thugs. I'm very upset that you want to break my legs. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll pay them back double. So I've decided to break your limbs. However, I don't like trouble. If you tell me some news, I promise you won't have to spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair. Tan Xiao's words were neither fast nor slow, but it was like a thunderclap that exploded in Scarface Lee's heart. The rest of my life will be spent in a wheelchair? What was he most afraid of? Of course, he was most afraid of spending the rest of his life in a wheelchair. These years, he had done a lot of evil deeds and offended a lot of people. Before, people hated him, but they didn't dare to retaliate against him because of his excellent martial arts skills and a group of brothers under him. But if his limbs were broken, wouldn't there be countless people looking for him for revenge when the time came? When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. When the wall falls, everyone pushes it. Scarface Lee was very clear that if that time came, he would probably not have the rest of his life. He steeled his heart, gritted his teeth and said, "Are you sure?" Tan Xiao lightly said, "I'm sure." Scarface Lee said with a deep voice, "Gu Yuetao." Sure enough, it's him. Tan Xiao secretly sighed inside. He had observed Gu Yuetao's facial features. After a simple exchange, he was clear about his character. He knew that this kid was a narrow-minded person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. However, he didn't offend him and was just too lazy to pay attention to him. As a result, he bore a grudge against him. Cripple your own arm and get the hell out of here. Scarface Lee's heart turned cold. Looking at the Mitsubishi Army knife in Tan Xiao's hand, he silently took out a dagger from his waist and stabbed his left arm without hesitation. Puff! The dagger was pulled out and blood spurted out. At this moment, Long Jinglin's figure appeared at the entrance of the trail. When he saw the scene in the trail, his complexion greatly changed and he dashed over with a speed of a 100-meter sprint. Big Bro Tang, what happened? They're just some jumping clowns who received money from others to break my 2 legs, said Tang Xiao lightly. But I dealt with them. Long Jinglin's eyes nearly popped out as he looked at the young bullies wailing in pain on the ground. He involuntarily exclaimed, "Big Bro Tang, these people are you the one who beat them down?" Tan Xiao nodded. Long Jinglin raised his hand to touch his shiny bald head. With an incredulous expression, he exclaimed in admiration, "Amazing! You're really amazing. You're really worthy to be this Long Jinglin's big bro. You're simply too awesome. 13 of them. No, that's not right. There's also that bastard Scarface Lee. You single-handedly cleaned them up. I simply worship you to death." Get lost. Tan Xiao couldn't help but laugh as he cursed. Chapter 68. Long Jinglin grinned and turned to look at Scarface Lee. His complexion suddenly changed as he roared, "Scarface Lee, I think you're tired of living. You even dare to attack my boss. Kneel down and kowtow to my boss as an apology." After Long Jinglin's arrival, Scarface Lee's heart felt like it had fallen into an ice cave. Since Long Jinglin recognized him, he naturally recognized Long Jinglin as well. He also knew Long Jinglin's identity and power. With a sullen face, he cursed and cursed Gu Yuetao inwardly. But with a fawning expression on his face, he said, "Young Master Long, I really didn't know that eldest bro Tang is your boss. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have dared to provoke Boss Tang even if I had 10 times the courage. It's all because of that bastard Gu Yuetao. He made us do it." Long Jinglin angrily said, "Gu Yuetao? This damned bastard was tired of living. I'll take care of him, but don't think you'll have it easy either. Kneel down and kowtow to my boss as an apology." "Forget it." Tan Xiao stopped Long Jinglin. He looked at Scarface Lee and indifferently said, "Take your men and scram. Remember, the wicked will be punished by the wicked. I, Tan Xiao, am not a good person, but since this is the first time you have offended me, I will not argue with you. If you dare to do anything improper in the future, be careful that I will destroy you all. Get lost. Scarface Lee endured the pain and nodded again and again. Yes, yes, yes. I will remember it. In the future, even if you give me 100 guts, I won't dare to offend you again. After a while, Tan Shio watched as Scarface Lee and his group left in a sorry state. He glanced at Long Jinglin and asked while walking towards the commercial street, "You didn't come looking for me just to flatter me, did you?" Long Jinglin's thoughts were seen through, and a trace of embarrassment appeared on his face. Indeed, he had come looking for Xiao Chen to hug his thigh. After all, he had learned from his brother, Long Zhengyu, about Tang Xiu's amazing and graceful bearing. He also learned from his father that when Tang Xiu treated Chen Jizhong, his violent beating methods were absolutely eye-catching and handsome to the extreme. Who was Chen Jizhong? That was the big boss of the Endless Virtue Pharmaceutical, a billionaire with a net worth of billions. What was the result? That towering figure that he had to look up to had actually knelt down and begged Tan Xiu to accept him as a disciple. Long Zhenglin felt that Tan Xiu's peerless charm had already reached a heaven-defying level. "Big bro Tang, can I just admire your grace?" Long Zhenglin said with a thick face and a dry smile. Tan Xiu snappily scolded him with a smile, "Get lost. Do you have nothing better to do? I have to go to the medicinal herbs market later, so I don't have time to deal with you. Just do what you need to do. Go to the medicinal herb market." "Big bro Tang, why are you going to the medicinal herbs market? Do you want to buy Chinese medicinal herbs? If there's a need, you can just tell Chen Jizhong. He can't wait to hug your thigh and worship you as his master." Tan Xiu's expression turned gloomy as he solemnly said, "Try not to trouble others if you can solve it yourself. The most difficult thing to repay in this world is a debt of gratitude, understand?" Long Jinglin's breathing stagnated. Then he nodded and said, "You're right. A debt of gratitude is indeed the most difficult to repay for a person who values friendship and righteousness and keeps his word. Big bro Tang, I'll drive you there." "You have a car?" A trace of surprise was revealed on Tan Xiu's face. But after thinking about it, he felt relieved. With Long Jinglin's identity and background, how could he not have a car? Perhaps it was a luxury car. "Of course I have one. Mine is a luxury sports car. Do you know how many beauties cry and shout to hitch a ride with me? This young master doesn't even spare a glance at them," said Long Zhenglin proudly. Sure enough, these second-generation nouveau riches are all the same. They simply don't understand the meaning of hoeing the fields at noon and sweat dripping on the ground. They live a life of luxury, squandering money like it was dirt. Their luxurious sports cars could be worth half a bowl of hot rice for many people with just a step on the accelerator. Tan Xiu followed Long Jinglin to a Lamborghini sports car. After observing it for a few moments, he secretly shook his head. With Long Jinglin's big stature, wouldn't he feel aggrieved driving this kind of sports car? As the saying goes, you get what you pay for. A good car was indeed a good car. After sitting inside, Tan Xiu could feel the comfortable feeling. After observing the interior, he said, "Reincarnation is really a technical job, especially for someone like you who has good skills. At least, compared to ordinary people, you have to struggle for at least a few decades. No, it should be a lifetime. This car of yours should be worth a few million, right? Many people can't even earn a few million in their lifetime." Long Zhenglin let out an embarrassed smile and said, "Big bro Tang, I didn't expect that apart from your skill in poison and martial arts, you also have a strong sense of humor. The longer I know you, the more I feel that you have great foresight. You're the peak of Mount Tai that I look up to." "Bootlicka," Tan Xiu cursed with a smile. At the Dragon Bay Resort, inside a classical-styled villa, Long Hanwen was holding a stack of documents and calmly reading them. On the tea table in front of him, smoke was curling up from the teacup, accompanied by a faint fragrance of tea. "Brother Chen, take a look at the investigation results." Long Hanwen's expression was a bit solemn. His eyes moved away from the last line of the document and handed it to Chen Jizhong, who was sitting at the side. Chen Jizhong silently took it. After reading it, his complexion turned exceptionally solemn. This document was the result of their investigation on Tan Xiu, especially the police investigation. A few days ago, the case of Xingqing City No. 1 High School was indeed committed by Tan Xiu to kill the A-level wanted criminal who took the hostage. Moreover, that A-level wanted criminal and the 5 A-level wanted criminals who were killed in the abandoned auto repair shop on Deep Red Cloud Street in peaceful Serene District are the same felons who trafficked in human organs. Since the police have investigated Tan Xiu, and Tan Xiu's whereabouts have been strange these days, I'm afraid he's the one who killed those 5 wanted criminals. Chen Zhizhong said with a complex expression. Long Hanwen nodded in agreement. That should be the case. Originally, I thought that Tan Xiu was just a good young man. But now it seems that he's definitely not as simple as he appears on the surface. Those 5 A-level wanted criminals, each of them was a ruthless character whose hands were stained with blood, yet all of them were killed by him. Including the one he killed at the school, the number of people who died in his hands is no less than 6. With a serious expression, Chen Zhizhong said, "Extraordinary people do extraordinary things. People who practice martial arts have a narrow sense of justice. The police can't do anything to those organ trafficking felons, but Tan Xiu's actions are also not wrong. This master? I firmly believe him." Long Hanwen was confused. "Are you sure that Tan Xiu's strength is stronger than yours?" Chen Zhizhong said with a resolute and decisive tone, "He's absolutely stronger than me. Isn't there a living example right now? If it were me, it would be absolutely impossible for me to save Yuan Jingxuan's ex-wife unscathed, and still be able to kill so many wanted criminals in one piece." Long Hanwen said, "Now that you said it, I remember that Tan Xiu unexpectedly saved Yuan Jingxuan's ex-wife. It seems that Yuan Jingxian owes him a big favor. Who would have thought that a little high school student could unexpectedly make 2 famous figures in the business world owe him a favor? I can't even imagine how terrifying his achievements will be when he's older." A trace of a smile was revealed on Chen Zhizhong's face. As the saying goes, when encountering a storm, a dragon will emerge. How could the master Chen Zhizhong, recognize be mediocre? Long Hanwen laughed and said, "That's right. However, our friendship with Yuan Jingxian is only SOSO, and our business cooperation is almost zero. Now that we have a relationship with Tan Xiu, we need to get closer to him." Chen Zhizhong couldn't help laughing. "Old fox." Haha. While the two of them were laughing, Long Hanwen received a text message. After reading it, he looked at Chen Zhizhong with a strange expression and said, "Little Lin sent me a message saying that Tan Xiu is going to Star City's medicinal herbs market." Chen Zhizhong suddenly got up and said without hesitation, "I'll go too." Long Hanwen quickly pulled him and said, "If you go there directly, Tan Xiu will definitely know that Little Lin secretly told us. I think that even if we go there, we must pretend that it's a chance encounter. Didn't you just recover from your injury? I think it's good to buy medicinal herbs as an excuse." "That's right." Chen Zhizhong patted his forehead as he grinned. Star City, Jean D Villa Complex. On the high-end European sofa, Yuan Chuling was dumbfounded as he looked at his mother, Zhao Jing, who was nestled in the arms of his father, Yuan Jingxian. There was a deep confusion in his eyes. He clearly remembered that his father and mother had divorced and lived in different places. But now, after a long while, Yuan Jingxian pacified Zhao Jing and said, "I'll make a phone call and ask about the situation at the auto repair shop on Deep Red Cloud Road in peaceful Serene District. I hope your savior is safe and sound." Zhao Jing had long lost the appearance of a strong woman as she obediently nodded. Yuan Chuling looked at his father, who grabbed the phone and walked to the side. With doubts in his heart, he came to his mother's side and sat down. He then asked in a low voice, "Mom, you and Dad are..." Zhao Jing glanced at her husband's back and whispered, "Little Ling, don't blame us for not telling you. In fact, your father and I divorced is fake. We have our own difficulties. Wait for a few years. After you graduate from college, you'll be able to survive in society with your own ability. We'll tell you the truth then. But for now, don't ask. Just study well." Yuan Chuling was stunned. Even in his dreams, he had never thought that his mother would give him such an answer. The divorce was fake? Then, did he misunderstand his parents? Suddenly, Yuan Chuling felt that he was too insensible. Thinking about how he had abandoned himself to despair, a strong sense of remorse arose in his heart. If it weren't for his eldest brother, Tan Xiu, he was afraid that he would still not make progress and abandon himself to despair. A few minutes later, Yuan Zhengxian hung up the phone as he returned to Zhao Jing and Yuan Chuling with a strange expression. After hesitating for a moment, he looked at his wife and asked, "Honey, you said on the phone that your savior is a young man, right? Do you know his name?" Chapter 69. Zhao Jing shook her head and said, "The situation was critical at that time, so I didn't have the time to ask. Besides, the other party didn't seem to want to tell me about his situation." "Honey, did something happen to my benefactor?" Yuan Jingxian said, "Your benefactor is fine. But those kidnappers, hearing that her benefactor was fine, Zhao Jing's tense heart immediately calmed down and curiously asked, "What happened to those kidnappers?" "I remember that in order to save me, my benefactor killed one of the kidnappers who tried to humiliate me." "Honey, what happened to my benefactor? We can't just stand idly by if the police want to pursue responsibility." Yuan Zhengxian forced a smile and said, "How could the police pursue the benefactor's responsibility? They're still having a headache about who killed those kidnappers. All 5 kidnappers were killed, and the young man who saved you has disappeared without a trace. Honey, since you don't know his name, you should know what he looks like, right?" "He looks like..." Zhao Jing described the face that she had deeply remembered. Yuan Chuling quietly listened to his mother's description. The more he heard, the weirder his expression became. When his mother's last sentence was spoken, he couldn't help but exclaim, "It's eldest brother. The one who saved my mother is my eldest brother, Tan Xiu." Yuan Jingxian frowned and reprimanded, "Little Ling, don't talk nonsense." Yuan Chuling said with all seriousness, "Dad, I'm not talking nonsense. If my mother's description of her benefactor is correct, then this person is really my eldest brother, Tan Xiu. That's right, my classmate was kidnapped by the kidnapper's accomplice at school. It was eldest brother who killed the criminal and saved my classmate." This, Yuan Zhengxian learned from the police what happened in Xingqing No. 1 High School a few days ago. But he never thought that his son would be able to determine the identity of his benefactor. Moreover, the other party was his son's classmate. "Little Ling, whether it's your classmate or not, your mother knows best. If you have time, invite your classmate to our house as a guest. When the time comes, your mother will know." Yuan Jingxian said while thinking. "All right." Yuan Chuling nodded heavily. Star City's medicinal herbs market was huge and had countless types of medicinal herbs. Every day, medicinal herbs were transported from all over the country. They were either sold locally or transported to other cities. Su Shangwen's life had been terrible recently, especially after the incident at his 40th birthday party, which caused many of his friends to reject him. Every time he thought of that incident, every time he thought of Tan Xiu's face, he would gnash his teeth in hatred. However, yesterday he had finally negotiated a deal and was just waiting to officially sign the contract. Therefore, he brought his wife to the medicinal herb market to buy some ginseng, cordyceps, and other medicinal herbs. When he returned home, he would make a pot of duck soup to reward himself. "Hubby, this medicinal herb market is a mess. Why did we come here to buy those medicinal herbs? Just leave it to your subordinates to handle these matters." Zhang Meiyun's face was filled with disgust as she looked at the noisy scene in the medicinal herb market. She covered her mouth and nose with her unstained fingers. After looking around, Su Shangwen shook his head and said, "I don't feel at ease leaving the matter of buying medicinal herbs to the subordinates. You're just a woman, so you don't know the ways of the medicinal herb industry. Medicinal herbs are also divided into artificially planted and wild ones. Artificially planted medicinal herbs don't have much effect. Only buying wild medicinal herbs is a great tonic. There are a lot of ways to do it," Zhang Meiyun snappily said. Suddenly Zhang Meiyun's eyes narrowed. She immediately raised her arm and said, "Hubby, look at that man. Doesn't he look like that little bastard Tan Xiu?" Su Shangwen looked at the direction of his wife's finger. An angry expression suddenly appeared on his face as he strode forward and said, "What do you mean? He's that little bastard. If it weren't for him, would our company's business be so miserable recently? Would my old friends avoid me like a plague? Let's go and see how I'll clean him up." Some time ago, Su Shangwen had sent his company's men to bribe a group of hooligans to teach Tan Xiao a lesson. But the result? He didn't know what happened to those damn hooligans. Not only did they not clean up Tan Xiao, but they even helped his younger sister, Su Lingyun, who he had always looked down on, to take care of the restaurant business. As a result, the business of the originally mediocre small restaurant turned out to be booming recently. "Tan Xiao, you're just a piece of mud that can't even hold up a wall. What are you doing in the medicine market instead of going to class in broad daylight? Your mom is working so hard to earn money to support your education, yet you're skipping class like this? Do you have any sense of humanity? Don't be so shameless." Su Shangwen's mouth was very vicious as he cursed at him. Tan Xiao frowned with a disgusted look in his eyes. He didn't look at the almanac when he went out today. He didn't expect that he would bump into Su Shangwen and his wife. He was perfectly aware of Su Shangwen's weight. If it wasn't because he was afraid that his mother would be sad, he would have already cleaned up Su Shangwen and his wife. "Who do you think you are? Do I need you to meddle in my affairs?" Tan Xiao indifferently glanced at Su Shangwen and coldly snorted. Su Shangwen was furious. He couldn't wait to slap this cheap nephew of his to death. Rolling up his sleeves, Su Shangwen angrily shouted, "Tan Xiao, you ask me who I am? I'm your uncle. As your elder, do you think I can't control you? Apologize to me and then go back to school. Otherwise, I'll report this to your principal and have you directly expelled and disqualified from the college entrance test." Tan Xiao sneered and said, "Uncle? My uncle is a bastard. Do you want to be that bastard? Also, haven't you already bribed the school's leaders and tried every means possible to make them expel me? I'll wait here. Do you have the ability to do it? Let's see if the school will expel me or you will make a fool of yourself." At the side, Long Zhenglin deeply frowned. His ability to observe people's words and body language was very powerful. Through the conversation between Su Shangwen and Tan Xiao, he was sure that the man in front of him was Tan Xiao's uncle. But as an uncle, he unexpectedly treated his nephew like this. He was truly worse than a beast. After a moment of hesitation, he took a few steps forward and stood side by side with Tan Xiao. He indifferently looked at Su Shangwen and said, "No matter who you are, humiliating Tan Xiao is the same as humiliating me, Long Zhenglin. Get the hell out of here, or I'll clean you up now." Su Shangwen stared blankly for a moment. Only then did he realize that there was a young man next to Tan Xiao. However, he had always been aloof in his company, and he was also arrogant even among his relatives. But now, he was actually being shouted at by a young man. He immediately became angry and said, "Where the hell did you come from? What does it have to do with you, this father teaching my nephew a lesson? Get the hell out of here, else I'll make you look good." Long Zhenglin was so angry that he laughed and said with a stern voice, "Do you have the ability to make me look good? This young master is afraid of my old man. There is no one else that Long Zhenglin is afraid of." Tan Xiao coldly looked at Su Shangwen's ashen face and fiery eyes. He then turned his head and said, "Long Zhenglin, I think it's a waste of time talking to this kind of person. Let's go." Long Zhenglin glared at Su Shangwen provocatively as he raised his leg to follow Tan Xiao to leave. Stop. Su Shangwen's anger soared to the sky as he blocked the two men and shouted, "You've really overturned the sky. You two little bastards. If I, Su Shangwen, don't tidy you up today, I'll write my surname upside down." What a big tone. A sneer rang out from the crowd that had gathered around. Gong Delong pulled his suitcase and walked to the front of Su Shangwen. He had already recognized Tan Xiao because he had seen Tan Xiao's photo before he came to Star City. However, he didn't expect that someone would dare to provoke their master's savior. Su Shangwen's complexion slightly changed. He didn't expect that someone would unexpectedly come out halfway. He looked at Gong Dalong a few times and found that Gong Dalong was wearing famous brands from head to toe, as well as a faint, imposing manner. His imposing manner immediately weakened a bit, but he still spoke in a bad mood. "Who are you, mister? Is it your turn to poke your nose into other people's business?" Gong Dalong no longer paid attention to Su Shangwen. After putting down his suitcase, he stood in front of Tan Xiao and respectfully said, "Grandmaster Tang, I'm Gong Dalong. Master asked me to greet you when I see you." Tan Xiao faintly nodded as he sized up Gong Dalong. He had a square face, thick eyebrows, big eyes, and deep eyes, yet there was no trace of craftiness in them. "Let's talk about our matter later." Gong Dalong deeply bowed to Tan Xiao before he turned to look at Su Shangwen and said, "Many people in Star City know who I am. If you have some power, send someone to inquire about it. Besides, Grandmaster Tang will be my honored guest, so it's not your turn to humiliate him. Else, you'll have to bear the consequences." Su Shangwen looked at Gong Dalong with an incredulous expression. He was silent for a while before he pointed at Tan Xiao and said, "You mean he's your honored guest? What kind of joke is this? No one knows his background better than I do. You couldn't have mistaken him for someone else, right?" "I'm not blind," Gong Dalong said with a sinking tone. Seeing that Gong Dalong insisted on sticking up for him, a bit of resentment suddenly sprouted in Su Shangwen's heart. He directly grabbed his mobile and took a few photos of Gong Dalong. After that, he wrote a few words and sent them out as fast as he could. Soon his mobile rang. Su Shangwen picked up the phone and heard the conversation. He finally replied with, "I know," and then hung up the phone. "I was wondering who it was. It turns out to be the eldest apprentice of Jia Ruidao, the one who made his fortune by gambling." "Gong Dalong, I just heard that your master can't even protect himself now, yet you're here to stick up for Tan Xiao? What are you pretending for?" Gong Dalong's face was filled with anger. Just as he was about to speak, a voice was faster than him. "I heard a dog barking from far away. No wonder there are so many people here." Chen Zhizhong and Long Hanwen walked together, and the one who spoke was Chen Zhizhong. Su Shangwen was dumbfounded. He was a person in the business circle, so how could he not know Chen Zhizhong and Long Hanwen? In his eyes, these two people were simply like towering mountains that he had to look up to. However, he could hear a bit of hidden meaning. It was as if Chen Zhizhong's insult was directed at him. Chapter 70. Su Shangwen desperately gulped down his saliva. He turned his head and fiercely glared at Tan Xiao. Only then did he change his appearance and said with an obsequious smile, "Boss Chen, I didn't expect to meet you here. Is this Boss Long? I'm Su Shangwen, the boss of Shangwen Real Estate. Boss Long, our Shangwen Real Estate has just reached an agreement with a subsidiary of your Long Group. I believe we can sign the contract in a few days." Long Hanwen sneered, "Shangwen Real Estate's Su Shangwen? Never heard of him." After saying that, under the watchful eyes of everyone present, he took out his mobile and dialed a cell number. Then he said with a sinking tone, "I want to know who has reached an agreement with Shangwen Real Estate. Fire him. Also, cancel the cooperation with Shangwen Real Estate. Remember, spread the news that whoever dares to cooperate with Shangwen Real Estate in the future will be going against our Long Group." What? Su Shangwen suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. He looked at Long Hanwen with disbelief and involuntarily exclaimed, "Boss Long, you are—" Long Hanwen pointed to Long Jinglin at Tan Xiao's side and said without being salty nor light, "He's my son. Someone just clamored to make him look good. Do you think that your son is being humiliated by others? As a father, you can just watch indifferently?" After saying that, he then pointed to Tan Xiao and said again, "Tan Xiao is my Long family's benefactor. Whoever dares to go against him will be going against my Long family. If he wants, as long as he says it, my Long family will do whatever it takes to erase your Shangwen Real Estate from this world forever." "What did you say?" Su Shangwen's complexion instantly turned deathly pale. His eyes kept wandering back and forth between Tan Xiao, Long Jinglin, and Long Hanwen. He could accept the fact that Long Jinglin was Long Hanwen's son. But when did this little bastard, Tan Xiao, do the Long family owe him a favor? In a flash, Su Shangwen seemed to have aged more than 10 years. That wave of fear was pounding against his shattered heart again and again. "It's over. He knew that he was finished. With Tan Xiu's hatred for him, it was likely that his Shangwen real estate would not be able to escape this time. However, what happened next made him open his mouth wide, and the fear in his eyes increased exponentially. After Long Hanwen finished speaking, Chen Jizhong walked a few steps to the front of Tan Xiu. He respectfully bowed and said, "Master, it's all my fault for coming late and making you suffer humiliation. Don't worry, even if Brother Long doesn't make a move, I won't let Shangwen real estate continue to exist. Please don't refuse, this is just a small token of my appreciation." Tan Xiu looked at Chen Jizhong indifferently and said, "I haven't agreed to accept you as my disciple." Still? Chen Jizhong keenly captured the implied meaning in Tan Xiu's words. He was overjoyed. Regardless of the large number of people gathered around, he knelt straight in front of Tan Xiu and begged, "Master, please accept me. I'll definitely follow the ancient tradition and be filial to you in the future. I'll listen to your words." Tan Xiu frowned. He waved his hand and said, "Get up first. We'll talk about this later." Seeing that Tan Xiu didn't directly refuse this time, Chen Jizhong was extremely happy inside. Just like a junior obeying his elder, he bowed his head and obediently stood to the side. Plop. Su Shangwen knelt in front of Tan Xiu and begged with a face full of regret, "Tan Xiu, my dear nephew. Uncle was in the wrong before. It's all Uncle's fault. You're a great man and don't stoop to my level. Please beg Boss Long and Boss Chen to let me off, okay? I promise that I'll serve you like a grandson in the future. I beg you." Zhang Meiyun's complexion was also as pale as paper at this moment. She was used to living a life of luxury. If Shangwen real estate, wow, the surrounding onlookers suddenly burst into an uproar. They originally came here to watch the fun and also figured out the relationship between Tan Xiu and Su Shangwen. They didn't expect that as an uncle, he would treat his nephew like that. What was even more unexpected was that after seeing a big shot standing up for Tan Xiu, this uncle didn't even care about his face and shamelessly knelt in front of his nephew. For a moment, the sound of discussion rang out. "I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen such a shameless person. It's true that there are all kinds of birds in a big forest. This is too shameless, isn't it? How can a person be so shameless to this extent?" An uncle kneeling in front of his nephew. Today is really an eye-opener. Is he still a man? He's so cheap just for some money. A man's knees have gold. He kneels to heaven, earth, and his parents. But he actually kneels in front of his nephew. He's really the best of the best. If I had such a son, I'd definitely strangle him to death. This kind of face is really disgusting. Looking at his behavior today, he must have done a lot of evil in the past. He should be properly punished. Don't forgive him. This kind of person should be ruined and lose everything. Shameless. Listening to the curses coming from the surrounding crowd, Su Shangwen's heart felt as if it was being cut by a knife. If there was a crack on the ground at this moment, he really wanted to drill into it. However, the premise was that Tan Xiu forgave him, and Long Hanwen and Chen Jizhong wouldn't deal with him. Tan Xiu had experienced thousands of years. Except for his mother, his heart had long been tempered to be as hard as a stone. Facing Su Shangwen's bitter pleading, he didn't speak. He was very clear about the truth. For people like Su Shangwen, even if he didn't clean him up, he wouldn't have a good end in the future. Similarly, he was also clear about one thing. Even in the immortal world, the immortals generally had a great demand for consciousness-condensing pills. "Boss, how much is this blood spiral shell?" Tan Xiu looked at the middle-aged stall owner and asked. The middle-aged stall owner looked at the blood spiral shell with a surprised expression and said with a confused expression, "Little brother, this isn't a blood spiral shell. It's called chestnut flower, and it has a very good effect in nourishing one's blood and qi. The price? Relatively speaking, it's a bit more expensive." "How much is it?" asked Tan Xiu. The middle-aged stall owner hesitated for a moment before saying, 500 yuan. "If you want it, I'll sell it to you." 500 yuan? Tan Xiu secretly rolled his eyes. If this blood spiral shell was placed in the immortal world, It would be a precious medicinal herb that countless people would break their heads to get. But now in this world, it was unexpectedly sold for only 500 yuan like a cabbage. At his side, Long Jinglin angrily interrupted and said, "Boss, are you trying to rip off a sucker? 500 yuan for a flower? I have a lot of this kind of flower. Do you want to buy it?" The middle-aged stall owner was speechless. "Boss, we're doing business, paying attention to not cheating the old and young, and paying attention to harmony," said Long Jinglin. "It's really not right for you to ask such a sky-high price. Just sell it to us for 200 yuan. If you agree, we'll pay immediately. But if you don't, we'll turn around and leave." The middle-aged stall owner looked at Long Jinglin and then looked at Tan Xiu. He then forced a smile and said, All right. I can tell that little brother has a discerning eye. Since you've said that, I'll sell it to you for 200 yuan. Long Jinglin looked at Tan Xiu with a proud expression. Just as he was about to take out the money, Tan Xiu had already taken out the money and handed 2 100 yuan bills to the middle-aged stall owner. Then, he took the blood spiral shell and turned around to leave. Tan Xiu didn't have much hope in this trip to the medicinal herbs market. He just wanted to try his luck, but he didn't expect that he would pick up a treasure. He knew about the price of medicinal herbs in this world, and the price of a slightly precious medicinal herb was outrageously high. Don't look at the hundreds of thousands of yuan in his bag. If he encountered a precious medicinal herb, perhaps he wouldn't even be able to buy one. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.